Hello, welcome. Please share the link. Okay, got it.
This is a champion in his prime.
Witness Canelo face the fearless.
Can Billy Joe Saunders defeat Canelo?
Canelo versus Saunders, May 8th. Super middleweight unification fight live on DAZN. Download the DAZN app.
Okay. Hello. Please share the video. We have very exciting event today, so make sure that you share the video with your friends and whatnot. Okay, now I got you. Okay.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, hang in there. Okay, welcome. Here we are. Before I to introduce you, hang in there. I would like to get back to some of my audience to ask them if they can share the link. And also, if you see that on the screen, we have a very few audience right now and following the live stream because of Saturday morning. The new Americans usually they go to bed late and wake up late. So anyway, for the event, we have to move forward, and now we have to go ahead and start. I would like first to introduce my guest, and you will say more about yourself than me. First, I usually call her Miss Werko. That Mame Werko, welcome. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Sort of a setup question. So depending on how much you want to know, my name is Mame Worku. I live in Denver, Colorado. How much do you want to know? Let's see. By daytime, I work for City and County of Denver. I'm in economic development workforce. I'm a mother of two. I am very much involved in community work. I also I'm a founder of a nonprofit organization called BLR Elder Care and WAS. WAS stands for Women of Africa Alliance for Solutions. We do work back in Ethiopia. We work with homeless elders. And then with WAS, we have about 5 focuses: women leadership, faith-based, youth leadership, economic growth, economic empowerment for women, different areas, different focuses. I grew up in radio, so I like to do things like this. And I have a couple YouTube channels that I've stepped into recently.
Yes.
I've gotten the guts to get me going in that world. So I do a few things. I have a master's degree in public administration. I am considered to be a student working towards my doctorate degree. God knows when it would be done, but someday it will be. So that's about it. Not much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. And the next guest is Naum Tadese. Naum, welcome. Would you please mind to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm not as I haven't done as many things as mommy over here, so there's not much to me.
Age
But my
matter,
name
right?
yeah, I'm on my way up. But my name's Naum Tadessa. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm currently a student at the University of Utah, double majoring in political science and international studies. I have done a lot of community work and been involved with politics here in Utah. Last year, I completed an internship at the governor's office as a special projects intern, as well as working as a community outreach intern for the Salt Lake County Mayor's office for New Americans. This summer, I will be at the Salt Lake City Mayor's office completing a communications internship, and then next year, I will be a presidential intern here at the University of Utah for higher education. So I have some things on the way. Have a strong interest in East African politics, specifically because my family is from Ethiopia. I was born here, but I've kept up with most of the things that happen in Ethiopia, and I'm just glad to be here today.
Thank you. Welcome. Let me edit the ticker here quick.
Asking, huh?
Okay. Okay. Now, let me start with Mame. The reason we are here, um, because not because we are politicians. Maybe Naum will one day be a politician, but Ms. Work may be the next Miss Sally Work, or maybe the president, the prime minister. However, the last 3 years there have been changes in Ethiopia that uh, that really became like a firestorm. That's something that unexpected for the last, I don't know, for the last maybe 60, 80, 100 years. And because of that, that what happened, why we all are here. And first, for the last year or so, we have been working together. First, we started with COVID. Then things went bad in the country. Then we wanted to make sure that Ethiopia continue instead of falling apart. So I would like to ask first Mame to share with us what she's currently doing to advocate or to educate the American people about what's happening in Ethiopia, in particular of the unfortunate events of November 2020, and also in the last 3 years, which when the Prime Minister came to power, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, what has been the changes that you think you are standing up for and you want to see, actually take a root? So could you please share with us?
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm watching the connection. It just a second ago it was telling me it's stable. So if you are unable to hear me, please give me a sign. But I right now went back just being okay. So I'm hoping that you can hear me. Correct? You can hear me fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So and I should include this introduction about whom I'm made. Sometimes I just don't like talking about myself. It gets weird for me, but. Currently, I am chairing a group, Ethiopian Public Diplomacy Network, aka Ethiopian Public Diplomacy Task Force. So I want to start from there. When we first started it, it started out as a task force because of what's happening in the country. The onset was due to the conflict that began in the month of October, I believe. And the group together, like I said, because of the conflict that broke out in Ethiopia and everything that was happening at the time. We have evolved since then, and we are now named Ethiopian Public Diplomacy Network because task force temporary, it does something and then it goes kind of it dissipates, right? It goes away. We have no intention of going away. We're planning on staying together. We're planning on pushing further, and we do have some visions that we would like to see happen in terms of what we would like to see happen in Ethiopia. And the reform has started since the election, since Dr. Abiy has become the prime minister. We've seen some hopeful things. So the group itself, and why I am involved, at least, or I started getting involved in this work, and a whole lot of us involved. Reason why we decided to really take part in this is because we believe in unity and we want to maintain the unity of Ethiopia, and is Ethiopia, no more no less. We grew up in Ethiopia. I was born and raised in Ethiopia. However, I lived longer than I lived there longer than I lived back in Ethiopia. But it's good to hear a young man that even though he was born and raised here, he kept up with what is happening Ethiopia, still in Ethiopia. For somebody who does not necessarily have some ties that we have. We raised in Ethiopia. It is what it is, that we know, and we all have but it has never left our heart. It has to be physically, but Ethiopia is with us.
If
It's in our mind.
Mame, internet
I
is
could see
like,
it.
internet seems like the bandwidth seems like not strong. It looks fuzzy, right? If you're okay, yeah, you know, okay, go ahead.
Much it's giving me so if it becomes really bad, can you hear me just fine? Okay, kind of. Hear me?
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce the group. So this is the kind of the reason why we were drawn into this team. Like I said, our task force, we are now a network. So the Ethiopian Diplomacy Network is really a coalition of Ethiopian Americans who live here in the States, comprised of voluntary representatives of community members, big groups, community-based and or nonprofit organizations, faith organizations, and other organized groups that can align with the objectives of EPDN. At this time, presently, EPDT, I should say, represents several states in the West Coast. So we're mostly the West Coast kind of group. I would say, if I'm not mistaken, about 13 states is what we're trying to represent. And we do have very much dedicated, committed individuals, like I said, civic organizations, community-based organizations coming together to try and really work or support the public diplomacy. And as we all know what's happening in Ethiopia, and stuff usually creates friction in the world of diplomacy, to be that stopgap. We're trying to be that voice that brings reason. Our goal is to really advocate for fair, balanced, fact-based, and unbiased to foster diplomatic public diplomacy among the Ethiopian American in between the U.S. and the Ethiopian government. Diplomatic countries and European countries.
So, sorry, I think the internet is giving you a hard time. Is it okay if you reboot it and come back?
Sure. Do you want me to just exit and come back?
Now we can hear you, but when you were reading, now
it's gonna be touch, yeah, it's just gonna be a little bit of touch and go. Sometimes it does this. I think they're doing some work in the area that could be.
Okay, can you start? Go back a little bit. Go back a little bit. So okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll go back to who we are. So that the group is comprised of community-based organizations, civic organizations, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, and community members whose objectives can align with the objectives of EPDT. Our objective is to advocate for fair. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, I dropped something here. Go ahead.
Our objective is to advocate for fair, balanced, fact-based, and unbiased information exchange to foster diplomatic and public relations to maintain a lasting diplomacy among the Ethiopian Americans, Ethiopian Eritreans in the US, and between the US and the Ethiopian government. Our long-term vision, however, is to develop a diplomatic network opportunity among the African countries and the European countries. We do have 3 areas of focus, one being advocacy, and for the reasons I kind of talked about a little bit because of what's happening, and we all know what's been happening between Ethiopia and the US. We will get into it probably maybe down the road, the talk of sanction and mandating and demanding and pressurizing the country to negotiate and all the different things. But One area that we have focus is the advocacy piece of it. We advocate for fair, like I said, balanced, fact-based information exchange. Then we also advocate for advancement and growth opportunity and sustainability for the country and the people of the country, the Ethiopian people. The other area that we focus on is public relations, which is really, really important. And the reason behind it is to foster positive public diplomacy and sustain diplomatic relationship between Ethiopia and Ethiopian Americans, US, Eritreans, the Euro, whatever place that we need to develop with that kind of public relations. We're striving. We're new. We just started. We're not gonna claim that we're all that in a bag of chips, but we're doing the best that we can to also fill that gap. And the other area that we have is resource mobilization, engaging the diaspora and the Ethiopian allies to support the development effort. And when we talk about development effort, we're talking about one major project we're supporting right now is the GERD project, which we will hopefully talk about a little bit about it, because it is really the main source, the ticket out of poverty for Ethiopia is the GERD project right now. And it's about time. It's about time that the country is taking stand, and it's about time that we're looking inwards and trying to mobilize the resources.
Sorry, someone is calling in. Okay, go ahead.
That's really what we do in this group. There's an echo now that I can hear. But so I chair this group right now. We have wonderful and committed, dedicated professionals in this group that work tirelessly, enormous amount of hours and effort is being put into this focus. We work side by side along with the embassy. We're not necessarily run by the embassy, but we work in alignment with the embassy. We're cooperating, we're collaborating, we're networking, we're creating synergy. And the thing that I want to say about that is for the last 30 years, we spent our lives fighting against the government that wasn't doing justice to anyone, to the country, to the people of Ethiopia. We were not standing next to anybody involved in that kind of situation. After such a long time, here we are trying to work hand in hand, good, bad, or indifferent, not necessarily, being just a mouthpiece to the administration, in being really a voice where it needs to be voiced. We're there. We listen to them, they listen to us. We try to balance the information exchange. We're here to support what will support Ethiopia, what will support the people of Ethiopia, what would help us continue with this reform that the country is undergoing right now. And I'm not talking about just politics, I'm talking about economic development. I'm talking about women empowerment. I'm talking about health. We're talking about sustaining the country all over again. If it's not exaggerating really, and I'm not trying to exaggerate, I think it really is rebuilding the country all over again, because the country hasn't been built for the last 30 years. The country's been stripped down slowly, a piece at a time, to almost nothing. And the thing that we need to understand is it's going to take that much time, a little longer than 2 years, a little longer than 3 years, to rebuild a country that's been well, how do I put this? That's been dismantled slowly for the last 27 years. So I think I have said enough, and then maybe moving forward, if we have questions, we can talk about a little bit more about the work. We focus on the thing that I want to mention really is we work with our elected officials. We've been asking for meeting times. We've been in front of so many of them. We're advocating. We're like I said, we're not advocates of just the government or certain people. We're advocating for Ethiopia and what is being said. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening between, because of the situation that's happening in Ethiopia. We hear a lot of statements coming out of the State Department. A lot of the public officials are making statements. The country is being pressurized to negotiate with what we consider to be a militant group. And we're here to advocate and say, how is that even possible? Why would you ask a country, a sovereign country, to do something that this country, the US, as a sovereign country itself, wouldn't dream of doing? So that's the kind of things that we try to do. I can stop here.
Thank you. Before moving to Naum, about the EPDN, Ethiopia Public Diplomacy Network. How can someone join can anyone join this network? And what background would be, what would be the requirements, in order to join it? Do they have to be an Ethiopian origin, or do they have to be from certain background, or socioeconomics? And also, from which state would that be, that person? Can anyone join it from anywhere from the world, or?
Well, like I said, it's a new group that just started very recently.
Okay.
The qualifications as of right now, if you believe in the unity of Ethiopia, there is no reason why we wouldn't work with somebody. We're structuring the group. There is a core group, and the core group would be working with the external group too. So we're trying to grow that group. We're not going to be able to do work with 500 people, 1,000 people, or 1,000,000 people. You'll always have to have that nucleus, right? That the core group that's going to be responsible for the vision of it, to actually put together a plan and then mobilize people. So absolutely, anybody and anyone could say, I want to support, tell me how, and then we can structure that and allow them to participate in the work itself. So there is no disqualification, so to speak, right now to join this group or to join hands and contribute to the work that we're doing. Whether or not you must be an Ethiopian origin, as of right now, it's not written in our anything at all that says you must be an Ethiopian. Like I said, I think the thing that I can say is, as long as you believe in the unity of Ethiopia, we're willing to work with anyone, anywhere in the world. Like I said, but we have a goal, we have a vision, we have an objective, and the objective is to maintain the unity of Ethiopia, to bring sustainability, to bring economic development, to rebuild the country, and to be a positive voice. Actually, I would love to see some of our American friends to join us in learning a little bit about Africa, Ethiopia, and then maybe us also learning from them in terms of what a foreign policy is, pertaining to, between Ethiopia or the US foreign policy when it comes to Africa. Anything that we can get, like I said, there is, well, as of right now, as of today, we're not saying you must be an Ethiopian to join. I would say, though, as long as we believe in the unity of Ethiopia and we're about maintaining public diplomacy, maintaining that positive image, and fostering healthy relationship between the U.S. and the Ethiopia, the U.S. And it's not just about Ethiopia. I mean, right now we're saying Ethiopia because we do have a lot of things that we need to address, but this is about Africa. Africa as a continent needs to come together, join hands, and really foster that strength. Because if today it's Ethiopia, tomorrow is some other place. It's not going to continue to just be an Ethiopian issue. It is going to become an African issue. If we do not show solidarity, if we do not show that coming together, that creating synergy, and bringing our heads together and say, we don't think so. Trust me, today it's Ethiopia, tomorrow it's going to be some other country in Africa.
Yes.
So I
Thank
hope I
you.
answered the question.
Yes, thank you. Okay, hang in there for now. Let me go to the warrior, Mr. Tadesse. Welcome. First of all, I would like to ask you, I'm really excited about you first. I'm excited from the day we met, and from the day I continue to talk with you. Every time I talk to you, I feel good, feel happy, in part because you were born here in America, but you are involved in issues that are happening in Ethiopia. And that's make me happy and also make me feel sad for my own kids. Would they be like Naomi, be involved in what happenings, what will things are happening in the motherland, Ethiopia, and anywhere in Africa. So I would like to ask you, what does it, you being a political science major, uh, what have you seen? How are the problems or successes in Ethiopia that you would like to contribute, or you would like to share with the Ethiopians, your age mate and older and older, and the leaders in the motherland, to make sure we improve our democratic processes, so that Ethiopia, as Mame said, Ethiopia could be a much better country in coming years, and also that example be also be an example somewhere in Africa to follow suit. What would you like to share with us?
Well, I want to say thank you for the kind words. I'm just thankful for my parents who kind of instilled, Ethiopian values, as well as like learning about Ethiopia and history and stuff like that. So thanking my parents for raising me within that kind of lens. Um, to start off, I think to understand Ethiopian politics, you have to understand like how detrimental ethnic federalism has been to the country's structure and how divisive it has made the country. Ethnic federalism came up as a sort of answer to the diverse ethnicities in Ethiopia and attempted to provide representation, but instead of being implemented in a way which was like gave each regional province their own government, the TPLF sort of hijacked that and instituted their own figureheads into that space. So basically, what was a product of ethnic federalism wasn't governmental representation, but rather cultural autonomy, which further divided the people in Ethiopia, which leads to a lot of the problems we see now between different ethnic groups and questions of secession and such. But in the last, I'd say 2.5 years with Abiy Ahmed coming into power, there has been some hope as he's seen as a reformationist, sort of shaking up what the TPLF kind of had in place, the government that they had in place. However, through his reformations, in my opinion, I believe that there has not been a focus on institutions and strengthening institutions within the country. In order for democracy, in my opinion, to be upheld, civil liberties and such need to be respected. So, freedom of speech, press, freedom of assembly, those basic things need to be sort of respected and upheld by the government. And as we see I believe it's a 2007 Terrorism Proclamation Act,
Okay.
is still in place in Ethiopia, which was an act that was used under Mallas Zenawi and Haile Mariam Desalegn to basically jail people who spoke out against the government. And they were able to use it broadly to any dissidents and blame them of like seditious acts against the government. So a thing that needs to be focused on is kind of strengthening these civil liberties. There has been a greater freedom of speech, I would say, but it isn't to the extent that would allow democracy to sort of continue and thrive in Ethiopia. So on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, institutionalization. Institutions are incredibly important in order to uphold democracy. So many times in Ethiopian governments, there's the central government that is expected to do everything. And when it comes to like seeing the judicial system to many people is simply an extension of the person who is in power. It is their judicial system, not the people's judicial system. It isn't. They don't work separate from the executive legislative branches. So when we focus on institutions, which I believe has been sort of put aside by the prime minister, we strengthen the belief in the system. Right now, many Ethiopians do not believe in the system. We see protests happening all over. We have the war in Tigray right now. We have protests happening in all over the Amara region in Bahar Dar, Gondar, Dese. We have continued, civil unrest in Oromia. And these things can be solved with, having the people believe in the system and trust in it. So those are just a couple of things that I would say are important to upholding democracy in Ethiopia. And lastly, I would like to add, probably, arguably, one of the most important things is transparency when it comes to government. If you are not transparent as a government, the people will not trust what you're doing. So bolstering our news media and journalists and allowing, dissidents and different thinkers within Ethiopia is necessary. Having a one-party system is not a democracy, even if there are elections. You need dissidents. You need people who do not agree with you, because the people who do not agree with you are the reason why democracy is able to flourish. We are all different. We all think this differently. So just highlighting that would be very important in my opinion. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you for those critical points. You mentioned something that usually people would think, sorry, this is not my usual place. This is my workplace, and the lighting and the setting of the laptop is just not as comfortable as I expected it. That's why I keep moving around. But now you mentioned many important points, and to many of our listeners, whether here in the motherland, particularly in the motherland, Ethiopia, or any repressive state across Africa, they see democracy and government as separate things. They see democracy like something that foreign born and be imported. It's not something that we can do it here. They think a democracy is just something that, like a textbook that specifically published in the United States or the UK, and it has to be shipped, and someday will arrive here. We'll read it. But let's see. You mentioned a very good point. One of the critical points you had mentioned. You said usually people think the civic institutions or the government institutions, they usually think it is an extension of the ruling person. Like the court, for example. Now, someone would think that Abiy wants us to do this to persecute you, instead of the judge that has to do his work. Even though Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed has nothing to do, has no interference within the judiciary system. The people there, they have already used to this system. The public and the judges themselves, they would think that if I act the way I independently think this is the right thing, the government will come and interfere with me, whether the police, the military generals, if one of them being accused of something of accountability. So could you tell us a little bit about that? How would we, because we are going to election now, and there might be some violations, and also there are high cases now in the court. So how would you advise people to realize, to understand that what's happening in the judiciary system. It's not Abiy Ahmed's extension, but that an independent body that has to do it works based on their, based on evidence, and also um, witnesses and whatnot, which is part of the evidence. What would you say about that, so that they do their work and people understand that this is not work, whatever they decide, we should not be interfering with?
Yeah, I think it must first be understood that kind of the trusting in institutions in Ethiopia will not happen overnight. It'll take a while to rebuild the trust, the trust in the government and the institutions that are there, because TPLF, which has been in power for 27 years, abused that um, and kind of made the people pull back from trusting that. So I believe in order to see that like courts and such are not an extension of the legislative or executive branch, there has to be the checks and balances that occur within democracies. The judges have to be also critical of what is happening, what laws are being passed, whether they are upholding Ethiopian values within the Ethiopian constitution, or whether they go against that and are harmful. When you see too often a court system that kind of works in cahoots with like the legislative branches and the prime minister, you don't believe that there is that separation. Even if there might be that separation, you don't believe that there is, because there isn't any disagreements. It's agreement after agreement after agreement. So understanding that this will take time to rebuild is essential, but also there is a need to speed up bureaucratic institutions and bureaucratic just bureaucracy in general, because too often it moves too slow in Ethiopia, to the point where they aren't effective. The institutions that we have are very weak and they do not serve the people as well as they could and as well as they should. So strengthening these and speeding up the processes is essential in order for people to understand that there is that separation between courts and Abiy Ahmed or the legislative branch, and such.
Okay, thank you. And indeed, there is a need to speed up these institutions, to strengthen them, because of there are so many high-profile cases, and there are many going to happen yet, because we have a fragmented system right now, and also everyone that is still ideologically still standing up for the previous regime, while they're saying in the front, you go to them, oh yeah, Abiy Ahmed. Back in the back, they are part of the juntas or juntas. They were still going to commit more, because of the coming election is one of them, because they don't want election to happen. At the same time, they don't realize there will be a constitutional crisis, right? But what would that be like if the election, for example, can you mention something about this? If election postponed, what do you know about the election? And if you can educate us, or if you can say something, the importance of this election, that it has to go on.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If your question was if the election was postponed again, what the ramifications would be?
The postponement of the election and having these part of institutions, because election, if the election boards, there are laws where you pass a certain period of time without electing officials through the ballots, they have constitutional crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have a take on that?
Well, I believe the longer that you postpone elections, the more legitimacy you lose as a leader. In the eyes of the people, you are no longer an official who was elected or appointed. You are simply someone who's trying to remain in power, even if your intentions are, public health and such. These this is basically the like mindset that people will see you as. They'll see you as just someone who is power hungry. So the longer that elections in Ethiopia are postponed, further we um the further we like ruin the people's trust in our government. It doesn't help repair it. These elections are very important and to Ethiopia because they're the first time where we could see, free and fair elections where, we could diversify the politics finally and
Okay.
not have it be a TPLF led organization, basically, that hijacked the government.
Mhm.
So like I said, the longer that we postpone these elections, the less people trust in them, even when they do happen and the results aren't what they want. Um, People will blame whatever whoever wins that and blame them for rigging the election. Elections don't matter if the losing side is always going to call for, saying that it's rigged and it wasn't fair. There's no point of elections at that point if no one trusts into the system that is in place. So that's what I would have to say about elections.
Okay, I have two more questions before going back to Mame. First question is, in the last few weeks, we have seen uprising across the
Mhm.
country or in the northern regions, particularly because of constant attacks on civilians. And in that protest, we have seen the prime minister poster being brought down. From the Western perspective, from a democratic state perspective, and also for the first time in Ethiopia, where a sitting prime minister poster being brought down and profanity were used toward the prime minister, but nobody got shot and nobody got arrested. To me, that's a maturing, a part of a democratic processes that we would like to see moving forward, getting stronger. But
Mhm.
except, profanities and ethnic, polarized events. Um, so, do you see that as a part of in the U.S. or in the West? We talk about open societies and people right to assemble. What is your take, and what Ethiopia needs to become an open society where we respect ideas, where we use democratic ideas, but not tribal ideas,
Mhm.
and assembly not a problem, but also should be part of our democracy, democratic rights. But at the same time, we do not want to incite violence when there's some elements already who wants to Ethiopia to be a failed state. Do you have any take on that at all? And what would you tell? Let's say you are speaking to your age group who were at the rally. How would you address them?
That's a good question. I think it's first important to not compare Ethiopia and uh, our push for democracy in Ethiopia to Western democracies. Um, Westernized democracies are systems that work for them in the West. So the United States system works for the United States because it is in itself a unique example of a country in the world. But expecting Western democracy to work in Ethiopia as a failed idea. Democracy in Ethiopia needs to happen. There are many shared, values and such that can be taken from democracy, but the systems that are put into place in Ethiopia need to be made in the idea and the mindset, the point of view of Ethiopians. Um, in order to like uphold Ethiopian sovereignty and such. But talking about how we have seen these protests, especially specifically in the Amara region, there has been great progress with people being able to go out and protest like this. But at the same time, when we see the sheer number of people, you can also be skeptical on whether it is truly because we're becoming a more open society, or whether the numbers were simply overwhelming to regional forces who were overseeing these protests. But I believe that civil societies in Ethiopia need to be looked at, and they need to be more open, and the government needs to be more open to hearing these again, like I said, dissident groups. Dissidents is not a bad thing, and we see that a lot. A lot of dissident movements do happen within youth, within the younger populations, because they are sick of institutions and such that have lasted for all this time. However, what also needs to be understood is that for 27 years, the Ethiopian people have been traumatized into these becoming culturally homogenous and in their respective regions. So expecting that to go away in a couple days, in a few years, is not realistic, because a generation, 2 generations almost have lived through believing that their ethnic identity is higher than the Ethiopian identity, and that their ethnic identity is more than another person's ethnic identity and such. So these divisions have been like entrenched within the people, creating a generational trauma within the people. So understanding the anger of youth is important, but also understanding that these things have happened in Ethiopia for generations now. So they simply won't be reversed, but these are right steps into the right direction.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I'll let you hang in there. Going back to Mame. Mame, I always enjoyed following you, and and all of these challenges that you are dealing with through your EPDN, and also having a background in public administration. So that says you are a public servant. So, and you are going to hold a public office one day here or there. That's what I said, usually here and there being the motherland, Africa and Ethiopia or anywhere else over there. So tell us a little bit about the challenges that you are experiencing right now that's going around Ethiopia. Whether constant attacks on civilians, the high profiles detainees without access to some of them. Maybe you can comment on any, and you may decide whatever you answer it. Some of the detainees, they're not released on bail and be able to follow the process. At the same time, while you support the current Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, um, you also want to hold the system to be accountable, to account, because we want to promote Ethiopia's democracy. Um, so, what would you like to share with us to educate people so that one thing they could be so that um, they will take with ease and realize that Ethiopia is going to improve, not going to fail. A failed state that we are all hoping for, that we, rather than talking like the three of us here are talking, because when we have a conversation, we will see a better, understanding. We can even pick a better location to eat at, and have more discussion, and have more things to do, and make things much better for us and for our kids for more to come. But in our communities, we think, that ethnic over there should stay over there. They should not come here, because we don't see taxes that the newcomers that bring with them, but we see invasion. But also there's invasion in it, because, for sure. But I don't want to make it long. But at the same time, I want you to help us understand, um, how would you tell an American to have a believing in what's going on with under Abiy Ahmed right now, that it will get better. Hang in there, support me, Mami. What I do is I'm not being lunatic, but I'm being, optimistic, and want to see a better Ethiopia. And Abiy Ahmed is the right person to, to stand with. It's not about the political party, not about whatnot, but someone. It's not about Abiy, but someone has to lead a country. So we need to follow that person in order to strengthen, institutions and whatnot, and the military and the police and whatnot. And whoever thinks he's better, it can come later, take over, and take the next one. Can you tell us any? Educate us, please, the audience, here and there.
Well, you said quite a bit in that question, so I'm going to try the best that I can to at least get to most of them in a summary. Before I do that, though, I want to get back to, maybe I would start to answer that question based off of what the gentleman said earlier, trust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes,
Trust.
please. That is what should be.
That's huge. Okay. So for the last 30 years, and he had mentioned the TPLF and what it was. Before TPLF, it was DERG. And the DERG strategy was divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
That was absolute strategy for that era, that regime, divide and conquer. Okay. Then the TPLF regime or that era came and said tribalism. In the Western world, you can compare that to individualistic ideology and just being individualized, like the whole individualistic ideology and outlook. So we have so many years of unstable principles, so to speak, foundations. When you look at where the foundation is, what it was founded on, and it took not 10 years, not 20, over 30 years. That means it's a generation. Like we have a couple generation that came from that mindset. And that mindset said, I can't trust government. I can't trust anyone. Heck, I can't even trust my own father, because during Dirk, you couldn't trust anyone. You couldn't. Can you? That's the kind of cynical, that's the kind of mistrust and distrust that was created, even though I was very, very young at that place, at that time. Trust me, that fear was so real. Couldn't trust your neighbor, you couldn't trust your brother, you couldn't trust somebody that's sitting next to you, because the way things happened, divide and conquer. That was the strategy. With TPLF, you're not, it's this group right here and that other group right here from the very beginning. Tribalism is what's been preached. Tribalism has been what I think, in my mind and my understanding, used as a strategy to occupy the minds of especially the younger generation, the up and coming generation. That was what was being said. You know, the media, the any kind of outlets that was used. When I first went to Ethiopia after so many years, I was blown away. I was like, wow, where is this country going to? Because 24 hours, I kid you not, however long that TV can be turned on, all you see is the young generation just dancing all day long. Different ethnic group. That's beautiful. I love it. Trust me, I love my country all day long. So what is the message there? What the people that are watching, the younger generation, the children that are coming up, watching that, what are they aspiring to? I saw it as a way, whoever was in power at that time, that was a numbing point, you know, because nobody was content, nobody was happy, nobody was pleased with what was happening. That was a numbing factor. Dance your way out, just dance away, pretend the world is fine. And there is a little bit of a Western influence. Technology brought that to us, right? There is no limit. There is nothing that was done either by the government or any one of us or anybody that lived in the country to manage what was being brought into the country, into the people, into the children. Technology opened it up. I'm going to be that. When we grew up, whether it's our parents or whether, however, technology, the technology that we had at the time, I remember growing up saying and being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Trust me, it wasn't what kids would say now. It wasn't. We were focused on education. We were focused on being better for yourself, be better for your community, be better, you know, somebody that can contribute to the country. And I'm not downgrading the artistic world, so don't come at me with that. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just saying at that time, for the longest time, the distraction that was being given to people was, you just watch that. That was being promoted. It is beautiful, right? It's beautiful to see different ethnics, different ethnicity, the tradition being promoted and whatnot. It's beautiful, but in the background, you were losing the game. In the background, a whole lot more was happening. I remember actually saying, when we were asked specific questions as leaders of communities about certain things in Ethiopia, the first thing I said was, you all need to change the media. You all need to change the message. You all need to use that forum, that venue, the technology itself, the news media, whatever it may be, the outlet itself. If you know how empowered you can make somebody, or you can empower a generation, however, the wrong message, you can use it for the right message and empower that same nation, that same generation, but use it for the right thing. And we live today, that same technology is being used for something nasty, something ugly, something divisive, purposefully, okay, purposely. We took technology with the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. We didn't decipher from any of it. Well, certain things happen, certain things will come with it. When you do this, you get that. There was no integrity in it. There was no question. We just took the pill in one shot because it meant something. Trust. How do we rebuild this trust? It took a couple generations. It ain't gonna happen in 3 days, in 4 days. It's not gonna happen in 3 years. We'll be glad if we could change, if we could see the paradigm shift, the mindset changing to some degree with the current generation and maybe the up and coming generation. To some degree, a mindset, like a paradigm shift, needs to happen. The head, it needs to start from the head. And when I say the head, I don't mean the physical head. I mean the thinking itself. I think for so many years we were programmed to think certain ways. And trust me, it works. Those of us that lived here have been reprogrammed somehow to some degree to think differently, right? I'm not thinking the way I used to when I was back in Africa. I'm not. If anything else, I'm an odd person because they see me and I'm African. They see me on Ethiopian. I open up my mouth and I say something, or they see me live there like, who are you? I remember like when I went to Ethiopia for the first time, they did not know what to do with me. I am one of them, definitely. I look like them. I speak the language. But like I said, spend 2 minutes with me and they're like, wait, what? It's because we assimilate, right? We adapt the environment that we live in.
And we
The
want to be a
environment,
better human. We're working to be a better humans, like which we don't
right?
use at home, right?
Like we've adapted what we believe to be the good thing. Well, maybe sometimes we may have adapted something, but we've adapted. We've sort of, like I said, I was very young when I came here. My thought process is different. I went to school. You get trained to think certain ways. I worked for the government over, you don't want to know, so I'm gonna tell you my name, but so many years.
Yeah.
You get trained. You get, like, the framework changes for you. Your frame of reference is different, right? We come at it differently. In the meantime, for the people that have gone through years and years and years and years of mistrust, distrust, atrocity, you cannot sit back and tell me, trust me when I tell you, just go ahead and trust me. People are going to test the system. People are going to want to see, can I really trust you? And the first thing that happens, one thing that happens that seems, that has the essence, that has the looking like, oh my God, I recognize this, I've seen this before, and this is what happened before. People are going to go to the completely opposite and to that extreme and say, I told you, nobody can be trusted. So there is no dialogue. There is no communication like you put it together here. It's okay, I keep forgetting his name. The young man talked about dissidents. Dissidents are okay. But for some of us that lived in Ethiopia for that long, and those were not fun times at all, you want to avoid them. You just want to avoid them because you know what comes after that. Okay, it's not, we talked about it, we either agreed to disagree and we went our merry ways. It comes with a consequence. You just don't do dissidents and walk away and say, yeah, maybe I've changed my ways or I helped somebody change their ways. That just didn't happen. So it is a struggle. It is a challenge. So what are we facing today? What is the challenge to try and do diplomacy, like maintaining that positive image, working through how Ethiopia is being portrayed right now. For the longest time, Africa and Ethiopia has been portrayed as the poor country, starving people, not so bright people, you name it. We know that, right? We've lived here to prove that every day. Now Ethiopia is being portrayed as something else. It is internal. It starts from within, okay? For whatever the end goal was, people had a strategy. Believe me, even in Africa, people have strategies. Whether they knew what the end goal is going to be and whether or not they recognize the consequences of that strategy, people had strategy. TPLF had a strategy. Why do you think we're facing what we're facing today? Because that strategy fell apart. That did not hit the goal. That last thing did not happen. It didn't happen. And in my mind, we should not let it happen because the end goal was there wouldn't be any Ethiopia. Ethiopia will be dismantled. Ethiopia will be pockets of people here and there that couldn't even stand each other. That's not how we were raised. It's okay to have our differences, right? That's our beauty.
Yes.
I don't know any other country that has so many different cultures and customs and traditions and beautifully put together. We grew up together. We ate together. We went to school together. I don't ever remember thinking you speak this other language and so I'm not going to talk to you. That's just not us. That wasn't us. What kept Ethiopia together was that solidarity. And lately we keep talking about that solidarity. Solidarity not because we believed in somebody's specific custom, specific ethnic group and specific language, tradition, this, that, or the other. Solidarity because we are first and foremost human beings put under the sun in Ethiopia. Like I said, I lived here a long time. This gentleman was born and raised here. He's an Ethiopian. That's the sense I'm getting. He considers himself to be an Ethiopian. Even the Bible talks about it. An Ethiopian is an Ethiopian. You cannot change. I mean, you know what I mean? Once you're always an Ethiopian. We left the country so many years ago, but Ethiopia is always with us. It never left. It never left our minds. It never left our heart. We never abandoned being an Ethiopian. Okay. Yes, certain people would say certain things about these, and it gets to be political, this, that, and the other. So, what are the challenges? The challenge is that we have to work towards a paradigm shift. Before we can see these tangible things changing, the head has to change, the thinking has to change. We have to be okay with differences. We have to be okay to walk away with maybe I didn't get my way, and I have to be willing and open to be to learn, to change my ways, because my way or the highway doesn't work. If I am not willing to change my way, why am I having a dialogue with anyone? That's not a dialogue, it's a monologue. I'm gonna say whatever it is that I have to say and make sure that you agree. If not, then you and I immediately we're enemies. That's the problem. We're in either extremes. We need to come to some kind of common ground. We can appreciate our differences, but we need to find what brings us together, find those common grounds, and decide this is what we want as a nation. And we work towards that common ground, what makes us one, you know? And the reason why I'm saying it starts from the head. Many years ago, I heard somebody say, give an example. These things stay with me, so I'll say it.
Okay.
We were talking about, we were having some situations, not necessarily positive. We were going through some conflict kind of situations. It was a group of people, and it had to do with organizational kind of stuff. And we had a meeting that took about 4, 5, 6 hours, and we weren't getting anywhere. Nobody was getting anywhere. We weren't necessarily coming to terms with what the common ground was, because some certain people had to have their way. And one gentleman got up and said, when a fish starts to rot, it starts from the head. It lived with me, seriously. I was so young when I heard this. I'm in leadership, okay? In so many different ways, I'm in leadership. And I always remember this. If the head is not good, the body isn't good.
Yeah.
It's not good. So we lived with a head that was corrupt, right? That actually stole from itself. Didn't care about the people, didn't care about the country. It had a facade that looked like a government, but in the back, there was no government. Seriously. I mean, if you take away that facade, what were we left with? Nothing. There was nothing. There was no money in the bank. There was no economic growth. Ethiopia was going backwards in so many different ways. The reform we're talking about isn't just, hey, let's feel good about Ethiopia. The reform we're talking about is bringing children with the right kind of education. Saying no to the junk that technology brings into the country unvetted. Educating moms and women. It's okay to take their space as mothers, as women, as leaders, whatever they may be, to be okay in that space.
Yeah.
Somehow, like I said, I'm going to go back to this thing one more time, technology. Or that systemically very much programmed mindset. You can only be this. You can only do this. You pass 1 inch from that, then you have consequences. So instead of having these kinds of dialogue and find out what our differences and appreciate our common grounds, we become two extremes. We immediately become against. There is no let's agree to disagree. You don't agree with my stand. You don't agree with what I say. You don't follow me. You don't whatever. You and I are now enemies. I'm going to antagonize you until the cows come home. That's our problem. That's the kind of challenge that we're facing right now. Being willing to listen. Seriously, I mean, just because I listened, and nobody's going to twist my arms and change my ways. But be willing, if I have to change, be willing to change. The Western world is working towards going back to the basics, because the basics is what made the Western world such a powerful country. the foundation itself. They're reevaluating their foundation. We're getting ready to leave our foundation. We're in a hurry to put that thing away and leave. That's a challenge. That is a challenge. And
Let me ask you there, right there. How many do you think of your age mate you left in the motherland with the same education, same, privilege, let's say, can you speak out the way you are without being attacked by a man?
that must be a trick question.
Yeah.
There are a few, let me tell you. I know sometimes I feel like I stick out like a sore thumb. I didn't get here without a challenge, and I've always talked about it. And the challenge for us, for somebody like me, is here in the States. I'm a woman and I'm African American. I am, when you push that, then I become African. Okay, you start from women. There's that big challenge right there, right? A woman should be in the kitchen. What are you doing here, mommy? And then the next thing is you're an African American. As a person of color comes with, comes challenges, right? We all know that. And then you push that a little bit, then I become an African with an accent. I'm just being real. That's what it is, right? Except I am educated as anybody can be educated. I can do whatever it is that they have me do for what I make a living for. My brain does not know accent. My brain does not see color. The brain does what you feed it. That's the point I'm trying to make. So I know over the years I've been told, and I'm not making this up, and I'm not talking about me, but I've been told, even from the younger generation, like from the teenagers being born here and raised, that had difficulties, struggles with identity, not wanting to identify themselves as Ethiopians or as Africans because it meant something else. I've had quite a few of them coming up to me and saying, if it means that, then we're okay. And I had to stop and say, what does that mean? So if you can be a professional woman, African American, African, then we're okay. Because they struggled. How do you go through these things? And I've had women, honestly, and saying, thank you for being that, because we're inspired. I know we're not here to talk about that, but sometimes you have to do that. It's a huge burden to have to live with and have to carry, but sometimes you just have to be that. You just have to go push that envelope just a little bit, because you just know there are others behind you looking and saying, would she make it? Would she go through that door? And would she survive? And trust me, it's not an easy place to be, but it can be. It can be done, and the time has come for that. It really is. It's not, I'm not trying, it's a movement. I'm not saying it's a movement. It could possibly be looked as a movement, but it's consistently believing in what you believe in. And it's consistently proving. It's tiring to prove yourself almost every day, almost every minute, but somebody had to do it, and you got to go do it. When I first went back to Ethiopia for a nonprofit project, it landed me in front of the president at the time. And I was given 10 minutes. We went in as the UN delegates for other conferences that we were doing, but that kind of gave us the opportunity to be to have a conversation with the president at the time, President Gurma, and we all were given about 8 to 10 minutes to say what you gotta say is all you got, and you will be stopped, because we were like 40 some of us, and he wasn't gonna sit there for 7 hours and listen to all of us. And in that 8 minutes, I said what I needed to say, and he kind of looked at me and said, that little teeny tiny thing came all the way here thinking she's gonna do something. He didn't mean it in a demeaning way, but I said, yep. And what he said was, you know what, it's a tall order, but if you do good, go do good. Because I was the only Ethiopian that went back with the group out of that many people, the only Ethiopian woman that was there. Sometimes it takes that. Whoever is listening to me today and think I'm crazy, maybe I am, but you know what? It takes sometimes that kind of craziness to cut a path, to start a path and saying, it's not being crazy. It's not being out of norm. Sometimes it does. People think I don't do anything at home, but I do, trust me. I know my responsibility as a mother, as a wife, and anything and everything else. I've got 2 girls. What am I teaching my girls is my main thing. So when they see me, what is it that I'm teaching them? More than what I say, what I do is what matters to them. And trust me, I have 2 strong young ladies right now. And they sometimes tell me, it's hard to keep up with you, mom, stop it. I'm like, I'm not stopping, because I know you're going to go beyond me. I haven't done anything yet. If anything else, maybe I may have showed a path that, and maybe I was able to maybe instill that just because you are a woman doesn't mean you're less than. Education is one, education is another thing, education is everything. I grew up in a household that believed in education beginning to an end. And the reason why I'm going to go back, and I will wrap this up in saying, in the things that you were asking, is the challenge is, what was the education? What was the generation being taught? What were we saying? What was the message? If you go back, stop for a minute and think about the last 30 years, what was the message coming out of Ethiopia? What was the message? What was the TV was saying? What was it? What was the government saying, spoken or otherwise? The unspoken verb. I lived through some of the Derg's nightmare. Trust me, couldn't even breathe if you couldn't. So we know, right? We know that. For the longest time, we talked about the brain drain. In Ethiopia, that was a huge thing. People talked about the brain drain. You educate people, you train them. First chance they get, they leave the country. You educate them. They tried and tried. There are so many people to this day that talk about the brain drain in Ethiopia, and I don't mean this in, like I said, derogatory way, or I'm not trying to demean anything, and I'm not saying people are not educated in Ethiopia, but we all know that the education system has suffered big time. People that have gotten any kind of education because they couldn't practice what it is that they have attained, they left the country. So who's leading in that world? What is the education looking like? Like I said, I worked for the government. Trust me, I've seen people come from Ethiopia, from Africa, with certain level of education, and it just amazes you what they are able to present to you. So the challenge is, how can we make this paradigm shift happen for all of us? How can we make ourselves, starts from me, be willing to change my own mindset, my own way of thinking. I don't have to become an enemy just because I don't agree with somebody. I can stand my ground, believe in what I believe in, but don't necessarily have to become antagonistic. I don't need to be that stumbling stone for somebody just because I don't believe in something that somebody else believes in. What we need to do is allow for that good to happen. Allow for our own head, even if it's not okay for us to act upon it, maybe to really be open to change our own mindset. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have. Is that my key?
No, thank you. Mame, since we started, I shouldn't disclose this, but just disclosing it. Since we started working together on issues, one thing, and which is the main problems our people have, our African communities, regardless of where, and our Ethiopian people, is usually we talk publicly, we talk a lot, but then when they come to do your part, nobody does it.
You got it.
You, despite the fact you have your own family, you have your job, you have your women organization, your business and whatnot, every time you being a co-chair of APDN, you would respond and send 3-5 pages, 1 a.m. The same. Well, while we got done with the meeting at 10 p.m. That commitment alone, that shows that you have adapted to the Western way of doing things, not because we have to accept everything as Westerner, Western. But when I said I can do this, uh, and I don't do it, I mean, everybody forgets, everybody thinks get on the way, right? In the way, but then completely forget and then not responding. That is part of the where we need the mindset
Yes.
to change.
Yes.
When you talk, if I have to tell somebody else about you, I would say she's serious. What she talk about, about Ethiopia is nothing that watering down Ethiopia or making Ethiopia look bad, because not about Dinknish Ethiopia. But the challenge is that the Dinknish doesn't look Dinknish anymore. What do we need to do to make it look better? You know, we have to change our way of this. We have been thinking, the way of thinking, the paradigm shift. The paradigm shift, for example, I am wearing an Ethiopian made cloth today. It's not because of I want to enforce myself to be an Ethiopian. But one thing I can tell, this is how I am. This bought by a friend of my high school classmate. You know, we haven't met since 1994, but we finally connected with Facebook. Bought this and sent it to me, along with all my family. We all got Ethiopian made clothes, and I love it. So I wanted to wear it for events like this. But someone would argue that you're not an Ethiopian because you don't look like an Ethiopian, because we believe in the skin color. But what makes an Ethiopian from the mainstream Ethiopian from someone coming from North Sudan? You know, no. The thing is, we have to start thinking how the wall came about. How did we come about? How do we make things better? So when talking now about standing up to support democratic processes in Ethiopia, someone would think, oh, you're supporting Abiy, you're supporting Oromo, or you are against Abiy, you are this group, you that group, you're what? It's not that way. The only way we can save the country, make it improve thing on governance and wages. That's why I found the Ethiopian Institute for Economic Justice, because there are many things that we need to do. When Dr. Abiy said, today, over 70% of Africans are under the age of 30. Many issues that we ignored end up causing conflicts. And instead of us picking up weapons against each other, why don't we start, fight, social justice, economic justice, equality, equity, equitable Ethiopia, gender issues, which he did. So when you talk to someone who just do not listen carefully, would think, can she even bake injera, the way she talk?
You
But
better believe it.
Right?
You better believe it. You better believe it. I make the most incredible injera, and I don't need to prove that to anyone, but let me just tell you, I believe in being in that space. We just had a panel discussion about a week ago specifically about this. We had a panel of 5 people. One was in politics, and a couple of them, one was a psychologist, one was I think a counselor, and then we had 2 young ladies who are in school. One graduated, one getting ready to actually finish up her master's degree, and very much involved in Pan-Africanist is how they introduce themselves. And the thing that we talked about is find your space and be okay with that space.
Yes.
When you find your space, you recognize it, you come to terms with it, you embrace it. There's a reason why you were put in that space. There was no mistake. You're not a mistake. You're not an accident. There was a reason, if I could even say a divine purpose, why we were made the way we were made. You embrace that place, that space, and you become you take that space and decide to embrace it. And then what you can do is then you can impact your own space.
Yes.
Then the space in the house, in your own home, and then in your own community, and then the space that you have may be impacting the rest of the world. So if you can change your own world from within, then you can impact the outside. And the thing that we were talking about was, especially as women, from the time a woman conceives life, they're putting out generation. That is not a responsibility and a role that should be taken lightly. However, in this generation,
Mm-hmm.
in this, this whatever 20th century, that has become something else. It has become, this is another show, I don't want to get into it, but the thing is, from the day, like, we are the ones that are putting out this generation. Can you imagine? Just stop for a minute and think about it. From what you eat while while you were pregnant, from what you
Mm-hmm.
eat, what you put in your mouth, what you say, how you speak, what you allow to happen around you from that pregnancy time impacts the child. Then you bring the child into the world, how
Mm-hmm.
you raise that child, what you say to that child, how you protect them, what you instill in them matters. And then guess what? They're going to go out into your own community. They're going to go out into your own world. And you had a chance, whether you did it or not, whether you took opportunity, you took that opportunity you had to make an amazing young man that we're talking about today. It's how he's talking with us, and I can just tell. Okay, or we can just be, somebody took the time to instill what he said. It wasn't instilled in me. Somebody took the time in him, and somebody took the time to instill what I believe was instilled in me: the value of education, value of self-respect. Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
responsibility we have, not just for ourselves, but the responsibility we have towards the world, toward our own community. What I do is not just my business, it is everybody else's business, in the way that what I do impacts my community. You said earlier, how do we make this Dinkanesh look really Dinkanesh? I have to make me Dinkanesh. It starts
Mm-hmm.
from me. When I become the Ganesh, then, because Ethiopia is not just the mountain, it's not just the whatever, the forest. Ethiopia is the people. The people is the Ethiopia, right? We're
Yes.
it, the people,
Mm-hmm.
right? What makes Ethiopia is the people that live in it. So if everybody becomes Dinganesh, which we, for the longest time, as far as I've known, that's what we had. And we need to just bring that back up. We need to go back to the basics. We need to go back to the thing that we're so in a hurry, ready to just leave behind and become something that is completely foreign to us. It's just not even us. The Western world, for us living in this country, I know so many people that have so much appreciation for Africa and African countries and our rich cultures, the language, the food. I mean, just being able to say, I am from Africa, I have that identity, great. Uh, but we're ready to just abandon that and become something else. And I just don't understand that. I just don't get that. So being in that space,
Mm-hmm.
and accepting that space, embracing it, and make that change you can from the space you occupy, I think is a way to go about it. Because I know I'm speaking to women right now, whoever is listening to me. Be
Mm-hmm.
okay in that space. There's a reason why you were put in there. Okay. You can impact an entire generation from how you raise your own child, how you live your own life. Okay. When I first sent my kids, when they first went out to college, and you know how that feels, right? The question I had to myself was, oh dear God, did I do it right? Did I give them a knife? Like, did I do enough? Would they survive the world out there? I know how I raised them. I know what the world is like. And as a mother, my question to myself was, did I do it right? Did I give them enough to sustain them? Because now, every minute, every second, mom isn't going to happen. They are out there and they have to stand on their own 2 feet and figure out the world. It turns out I think I did okay somehow, because they're still in college and they're getting ready to graduate. So I'm not still convinced. I still feel like I can do more, but I feel like I've given them enough to stand on. Aside what I hear from them. So, women and men. Okay, it's not just the women's responsibility to bring up a nation. Men's responsibility is not from just behind an office chair. It is not. I'm sorry. I know I'm not. Look, you
No, no,
gave
we
me
know.
this. You
No,
gave me this thing. I'm just gonna go for it.
yeah, we know. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
It's
So,
it's the father figure. Okay. Okay. So for the girls, they look up to the father and say, someday I'm going to be with somebody who's going to be a father of my child. If this is what it's like to be in that role, do I want it or do I not? We have to think about that. I'm being honest. I don't know why somebody gave me this opportunity today, but if I can just talk to somebody who's willing to listen, you know, it's not just a name they should carry. The relationship matters. The relationship matters. Or else they're going to go out and figure it out, and somebody else will teach your child for you. And moms, women like me, things we do, things we say, more than the stuff that we say, the stuff that we do, the things that we do impact the lives of our children. When we do certain things or don't do certain things, you have to think about that child is watching you. They're copying you because you're the very first one to write in their lives. You are given a blank slate, an empty canvas to write whatever it is you're going to write. Like I said, I asked myself, did I do it right? Oh, dear God, what did I say? What did I do? Wow. What is it that they're walking away with, right? So being aware and being conscious and being very deliberate and intentful is very important for all of us. It's not too late. It's okay to sit down and say to your child, did I do it wrong? Where did I go wrong? If I did anything wrong, please tell me so I can correct myself. It's not too late. We can all change.
Okay.
We can take the lead. We can take the responsibility in saying, I am sorry if I've done it wrong. What can we do better? Because there's a huge gap between the young generation and the older generation. The first generation and the second generation is struggling right here in our own countries, right here in the states that we live, and maybe other places too. Whether it's language, whether it's cultural, whatever you name it, the mindset, there's a huge gap. Okay,
Yes.
huge gap, and that's probably another discussion. I hope you do it because there's so much that we can learn. But for what we're talking about today, in order for us to make Ethiopia, Dinkanesh, using your term, to make Ethiopia Ethiopia, I am Ethiopian. I am it. If I am rotten, then well, I represent Ethiopia, whether I like it or not. In the things that I do, in the things that I say, in how I raise my kids, and how I lead my own life, represent to some degree Ethiopia. Because if somebody's going to go out there and say, that's an Ethiopian woman. Wow, I didn't know about this. I didn't know this about Ethiopians, is what they would say. They don't know my name. They would literally say, yeah, that's my man, whatever. Or they would say, yeah, that's an Ethiopian person. I didn't know this about Ethiopians. Ethiopians had created a name for ourselves. Okay, based on my experience at least. We're supposed to be hardworking people. We're supposed to be trustworthy. We're supposed to be loyal. There are some things that are attached to us that we take so much pride in. We need to ask ourselves now, is that still the name that we're carrying?
Okay, hang in there. I'll come back to you. Also ask you a question about the GERD, because when you say GERD, you think everybody knows about it. Why don't you more to tell us?
I know, right? Assumptions.
Yes. Let me go back to the warriors.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take that much time.
No, that's okay. Anytime there's something you can also add to what the other person is saying. But the warriors, what have you seen as okay, let me put it this way. Today you ran into, you're going back to the library, if the library is open. By the way, do you know that at the University of Utah Library, there's a portrait of His Majesty Haile Selassie? Yeah, it's there. I was told about it.
I did not know that. Where is it at?
Yeah, I was told about it one upon a time when I used to work there, and I went and searched for it, and I was to be escorted to the lock room. They moved it from where it used to be hangs. But now in the third floor somewhere, you need to go and ask the library. Okay. They will take you there.
Okay.
So let's say you were there today, and you ran into a person who is standing in line to get at the Starbucks coffee set, let's say in a corner there within the library,
Yeah.
and you realize that that's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, what would you say to him?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a lot.
How
I
much time do you have?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how much time do I have. I don't know if a lot of it would be nice to.
Like you have 2 minutes before they say
There,
no way.
that is a loaded question. I think
Mhm.
what I would say would revolve around him needing to be a leader for all Ethiopians and addressing, discrepancies that are brought up by all Ethiopians as well. Like Miss Mami said, Ethiopia has, we've had the TPLF regime for 27 years. We had the Derg before. We had an imperialist system before that. So, constantly for generations, there was always a particular group which was, oppressed or, marginalized in a certain sense. So, that pain and that trauma carries on and festers and builds up and becomes hatred. And when these things aren't addressed, they, are become dividing factors in, Ethiopia. So if I were to see Abiy Ahmed, I would tell him to address, these serious issues that are, brought up by each ethnic group. The for example, accusations of war crimes and stuff like that in Tigray, massacres of Amara people, oppression in Oromia, things like this need to be addressed, especially in other, smaller ethnic groups as well, because oftentimes Ethiopia is only seen as Oromo, Amara, and Tigray when there are over 80 other different ethnicities and ethnic groups that do have their own, sense of trauma and stuff that is not addressed just because of they're not put at like the limelight. So I would tell him to focus on that.
Thank you. And what if he asked you, do you speak Amharic? Would you address him in Amharic?
I'm
Say it
confident. I'm
in
confident in
Amharic.
my Amharic.
Can you say it in Amharic?
I don't. I'm confident in my Amharic, but I feel like I'd be able to get it better in English.
The question is, like I was talking to Mami earlier about the women issues that being ignored, the women contributions being ignored across Africa. But now Tanzania has a president, female president, who was a vice president. But Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy, for the first leader to increase women in the government, number of women in the government. Even there was one upon time was short time, I think, women head of the military. So I was asking her whether people, the way she argued, people would think, oh yeah, she's that. I mean, I don't even think she does this, But do you speak Amharic? Something so that they can believe, in you, whether do you eat injera? If you don't eat injera, you're not. So I've seen even within many communities, like even Oromo community, if you don't speak Oromo, you're not Oromo. So what are some of the issues, like the mindset Ms. Warko was talking about, or Ms. Mame talking about? What other mindset would you like to see change? I went to Ethiopia in 2008. That was the first time I visited since I left the country. It was 14 years later, and since then I haven't gone back. But I fight every day because the mindset never changed. I was fighting every day. I can tell you an example later, but what one thing would you share with your age groups in Ethiopia?
I would echo similar to Miss Mami, the need to have women in more spaces, just in society in general. Ethiopia is very conservative in its nature and very backwards, especially when it comes to women progression. And we don't see, women in, workplaces as much. Now we do, in like, as time has gone on, we do see more women coming up in workplaces, more women getting education, but it's not to the extent that we need to see it. There still are the subliminal expectations of womanly tasks. Even if you go to work, get an education and such like that, you're expected to come home, clean, cook, do whatever for the kids, all these things. So that kind of backwards thinking needs to change. And you mentioned, Abiy Ahmed putting more women in positions of power, but at the same time, that is not enough. That if you just have women, in like positions of power, let's say, but don't address the subliminal cultural notions that are holding, women back further, those women who are in places of power are simply tokenized. They are a token of, diversity or diversifying Abiy's administration, rather than actually addressing the core cultural problem of women not being empowered in Ethiopia. So I think that is definitely one of the biggest things that needs to be addressed, but also, like we've been brought up multiple times here, education and changing our mindsets on how we view other ethnicities, and figuring out what will work for the complex question that Ethiopia has. How do you represent over 80 different ethnic groups with, their own respective languages, cultures, experiences, and such? So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. For the record, I should say, when I was saying I was fighting for some from over there, it will be taken as like physically. So I can't even punch myself. So I cannot manage to punch somebody else. But Ms. Mame, tell us about the GERTS. What does the GERTS stand for, and why do you talk about it? What should people need to know about it? Why should they support it?
All right, so GERD is for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance, right? Is building, I believe it's 2011. Primarily, it started to that, but 2011 is when they really got it going. And the dam, the reason I said it's a ticket out of poverty is generate enough will help the country, and then electricity power to neighboring countries. Is a huge, okay, so my internet is saying unstable. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit.
Yes.
Second,
You're
hopefully
out now completely.
okay. It's just a minute. Hear me?
You're frozen and we can't really hear you.
I hope the network is not anti-GERD. Okay, getting better.
Back.
It's getting better a little bit.
Okay. Let's give it a minute.
Okay, say something.
It's not working, yeah.
Hello.
She's frozen on my screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
until you get better, let me get back to you. I know your time is.
If you would yeah, I have to leave shortly because I'm a groomsman in a wedding today. But if you want, I can touch on the GERD as well.
We will continue, but yeah, I want you to add on some other stuff. But there is usually, whenever we have a conversation, you have this saying that I like, the echo chamber.
Yeah.
So, uh, uh, because of the echo chamber makes you not to fit in. So tell us a little bit of how the youth, that born in the U.S., who are, culturally divided. They're American, and they're also from respective countries, wherever their parents come from.
Mhm.
How would you encourage the involvement of them without fearing the echo chamber? Back slowly, Miss Mame. Okay, go ahead.
I would say that's a good question because a lot of time youth feel like they are excluded from conversations due to older generations that, kind of push the notion that youth are, not educated enough. They're too young to know these issues. Some things that I've faced as well is like, oh, since you were born here, you're not Ethiopian, or you don't understand what it's like there, and things like that, even though I've been, back home and stuff like that. So I would say it's essential to find places that and space, specifically spaces that allow for you to, freely think and speak your mind. Because even if you're, a part of any organization that becomes an echo chamber and you seem to have like, a differing opinion, you won't want to speak out because of what that does. If everyone's already in agreement and you're the black sheep, well, that just puts you, at odds with yourself and the rest of the team, and then, does not make you feel comfortable. So putting yourself in spaces where people will have different opinions than you, but they are willing to listen to different opinions as well, and willing to, give you the space and the time to express yourself. Kind of like what we're doing today. Having me on here gives, me as a youth the voice to, come out here and speak on Ethiopian politics to a certain extent and like what I believe should change. And a lot of like the things I believe in sometimes are seen as like, too progressive for other, older generations of Ethiopians and stuff like that. But that, like Miss Mami said, that's, as long as we have to create spaces where we aren't, fighting each other as soon as someone has like a different opinion. So to youth, I would say just find spaces where you feel comfortable, find spaces where people think different than you, open your mind to, other differing opinions, and there are certain morals and values that you have and that I believe you should not sacrifice as well, just as a simple means to, agree with someone. So those are a couple things that I would say to the youth here.
Because those what you mentioned, as Amami earlier mentioned, those are the key ingredients, to strengthening our way of thinking, which basically democracy. Democracy is not something that they walk like a white man coming from Europe or coming from America. But it is simply about respecting our opinions. Walk away, like Mami mentioned earlier. If you disagree with something, I know I disagree with it. Do I keep punching you until you realize that, or punching me until you realize you completely, broke my nose and, passed out and whatnot? No, but way that, okay, we can disagree to this point and we can agree to this.
Exactly. And if you look at it, the including youth voices is, not elevated as much as it should be, considering the fact that the youth are the future. We are the future generation, the people who are
Yes.
going to be, maybe in these institutions, maybe, you know, these things. So the further you repress that, or, you know, create echo chambers where, you know, youth thinking isn't allowed to like flourish, that in many cases creates, you know, animosity with the younger generations to the older generations and the systems that they have in place, making us, you know, want to, you know, act irrationally in many cases. You see in many cases where, like, generationally, you'll see irrational processes, and I believe that can be changed if you just take the steps to include youth, because youth, we are, you know, the up and coming leaders, hopefully, in our, you know, society, and our what, you know, what we think about and talk about. So yeah.
I know Mami want to jump in. Go ahead.
Can I ask him a question based on what he just said, though? Is it okay? So speaking of which, having the youth voice being heard, we've been trying to engage the youth, the young generation, and every now and then I, at least in my interaction, come across this notion that the youth has been set aside for a while. Like you said, you know, it wasn't necessarily that there was no space for the youth in what was happening, at least in the adult space. The first generation, you know, the notion you had mentioned, you know, you were born here, what do you know about Ethiopia? Or you're young, you don't know, you don't have experiences, whatever the reason may be. We're sensing and we're recognizing that the youth has not necessarily been involved in so many of the things that we've been trying to do, and we're trying to actually, like I said earlier, acknowledge the fact that yes, your voices have not necessarily been included in the things that we do for whatever reason. Now we're saying, okay, so we did that wrong. We need your voices. Your voice needs to be heard. You are the up and coming leaders. But like I said, there is this notion though from the young generation that they just don't seem to want to be in that space with the adults, or at least the first generation. There's this notion that I don't know, I don't want to call it an attitude or some kind of an outlook, some kind of mindset that I get sometimes from the young generation, that, you know, from calling Ethiopians Habashas, you Habasha people don't get us, kind of thing. What is it that you think we can do to remedy that? What is it that we need to do as the maybe first generation, or I don't know if I'm considered first generation, second, third, or fourth, I don't know. But what do you think will help to try and engage your generation in bridging that gap?
That is not an echo chamber.
Yeah, that's a great question. Kind of to touch on like what you mentioned of how like youth seem to be like, you know, disengaged from the older generation. I feel like kind of like how I was talking about, like, you know, women in politics and stuff like that being a symbol, like a token type symbol, and not truly, you know, addressing these sort of like underlying issues. I feel like a lot of youth see their involvement in organizations where there is, you know, the youth member, and it's just one youth versus, you know, an array of, you know, adults and older generations. Their voice isn't really, even though they are in that space, their voice isn't really heard. It's simply seen as kind of a way to, like, show like the organization is bringing in the youth. You know, we do have a youth member, so we do, you know, consider youth input, but in reality, it isn't a welcoming space, I would say. So, it is a hard question to answer because, you know, there are just so many differences and even similarities, but a lot of differences in the way, you know, like me being born in America, like how I was raised, even though I was like raised with a lot of Ethiopian values, I still, you know, the people I was around here in America, things that I see here, differ severely from, like, you know, others. So I think what I see in older generations is the lack of how do I say this? They don't they don't listen as much or they don't take it seriously what the youth has to say. and they don't listen. They think it's, due to naive nature that we, are thinking this way. When in reality, a lot of us, are independent thinkers and, building ourselves up. So even though we are, young, that should not determine the seriousness or the quality of information that we are like providing. So I think in spaces where you want to include more youth, kind of being open to understanding where youth are coming from, why they're coming from, that space, and what you can do to kind of like bridge the gap, because there is a gap between, the generation that's born in America versus the generation that left Ethiopia versus the generation that's still in Ethiopia. There are multiple gaps that need to be crossed and bridged, but instead they seem to be kind of ignored and put aside. And then the further more that they're put aside, youth, instead of going to the older generation, would rather set their own institutions and places of other youth coming together,
Right.
and then they're like, oh, we don't need old people or older generations.
So that was my question. So I think it's okay for, I'm sorry, Okoye, is it okay for me to ask? Don't want to take over. Can I ask?
Oh, pardon me?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So I think based on what you just said, I think the youth starting their own institutions, starting their own groups, I think it's a good thing. My question though is, what about when it's time, when it's needed for the youth to come with the so-called older generation or the first generation? Do you see the value in that? Because yes, we are somehow set in our ways, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I've been trying to break that barrier there and say they need to understand us and we need to understand them. I think it's slightly easier for me in some ways because I was in that age here and now I'm in this age. I'm not that old, but I am old enough to kind of associate with the older generation. And what I'm thinking is, based on what you just said towards the end, if we don't close that gap, the gap is going to continue to widen. And the first generation has a lot of work to come towards the youth, and the youth also needs to come towards the middle, because I think there is that dismissive kind of attitude. Sometimes I don't know if it's an attitude or a mindset, like you all are set on your ways, you don't get us, we don't get you. We're kind of somehow Americanized, or we are American because you guys, or the younger generation that was born here, considers themselves being American. Not necessarily everybody relates to being an Ethiopian as much as you do, but I think in most cases they do. What is it that we could do to really bridge that? And it's not necessarily, I mean, I will continue to speak towards the first generation and saying we got to bring the youth back. And I think it starts from the home. But from your side,
exactly, that is what I was going to touch on, is it starting from the home. These sort of divisions do begin with how open you are with your parents and how willing you are, your uncles and aunts, and older grandparents, how willing you are to like openly talk to them about issues in your own life that don't deal with politics. If you don't see that sort of openness within your own family spaces, which are supposed to be the safe spaces where you belong, the people you're around all the time, how are you going to trust a random stranger, even though they are Ethiopian? How are you going to trust them to be understanding of you? So yeah, to an extent it is generalizing that all older generations think this way. And I appreciate you asking these questions, because I feel like they often aren't asked or sought for. But I would say it definitely starts at the core of like the family, and walking that line of American life versus keeping Ethiopian values and traditions, versus being open with your children and actually talking. I feel like Ethiopian culture likes to not talk about certain things. There are a lot of things there are a lot of things that are very taboo, to touch on and talk about. And
Mhm.
that doesn't help anyone at all. Like that just further, we're just gonna keep to ourselves, and we're just gonna keep to ourselves. And definitely seen a shift in Ethiopian Americans who, like first generations who are like, like I learned a lot of good things from my parents, but I'm doing a lot differently, being more open with my kids. Mental health is a big thing, talking about mental
Yes,
health
yes.
with, kids and stuff like that, talking about just all these little things and major things in life. But it definitely does start at the house, I would say.
Awesome. I got my answers. It starts from the home, but everybody that's listening, and you touched on another incredible point that it's been always an important thing for me, which is mental health.
Mhm.
It is a taboo. We don't talk about it. The Holanchi and the
Yeah,
communication,
you
you
just need
recognize.
sabr and then you're done. That's what they say.
I mean, it is what it is, right? We all do this. But I think we need to just put this down and have that conversation and be open to listen.
Mhm.
It's very concerning. It's very, very concerning that a lot of the second generation, a lot of our own kids that we gave birth here and they were raised here are finding families elsewhere, within
Mhm.
their friends, within their coaches, within their whoever it is. And some stranger is going to come and be a family to my child. How fair is that? Because I don't know how to open up. Seriously,
Mhm.
they're going to look for somebody who would open up and have that kind of conversation. Whether they're strangers or not, don't matter. It just does not matter. So the battle is lost when if I'm closed down and I don't have that openness, or before somebody says something, I do this, I'm gonna scare them, right? So that's not communication, that's not dialogue. That's like, what did you just say? We don't know when to discipline, we don't know when to just listen and be supportive. You
Mhm.
support first and then you discipline. I think we do it the other way around. We are first, we lash out first, and then we
Mhm.
say, so what do we do now to fix it?
Exactly. Exactly. And that needs to change.
So that needs to change. The embrace come first, right?
Mhm.
And then together figure out what it is that needs to be done, because I think what the way we're doing it is driving the kids away from us. It's putting some kind of wedge between us.
Mhm.
The division is becoming more and more prominent.
Yeah,
It scares me sometimes to think that it is going to continue that way, and then we're going to turn right around and say, what did we just do? Like, where are they?
exactly.
It's not too late.
Mhm.
Um, we have somebody like you. Hopefully, you'll take this conversation to others, and from your echo chambers, maybe someday we get invited to that echo chamber, and then we can say, not this, but how can we do this?
Mhm.
What can we do better? I want to be able to listen to the young generation in asking questions. What can we do better? Because apparently we thought we did, but there are some things that we didn't do good. We didn't
Yeah,
do right. In our way, it was right, because that's how we were raised. Mama raised me this way. I'm gonna raise my child this way. But apparently, there are some things that we missed. I live with an American family. I've adapted quite a bit. That helped me to raise my kids and understand them to, from, like you just said earlier, understanding the young generation on about where they're coming from. So when they say certain things, this doesn't come to me immediately because I was there. I was that age. And
mhm.
like I said, I know both worlds. I'm somehow, I guess, in a very weird place or a unique place, whatever the term may be. I've been in both worlds, and I
Yeah.
feel like I can take it. I've taken advantage of both worlds. I have my Ethiopianness. I have the American side in me because, like I said, I lived here longer than
Mhm.
I lived back home, but I lived there long enough to have that essence, the essence of being an Ethiopian. And hopefully, some other time, some other forum, we will have an opportunity to, just because he said you have to drop off, to really join you guys in that echo chamber and echo this and saying, we're recognizing it. I will be the one to say, we are recognizing it. We've lacked some things. We didn't always do everything right. We want the young generation, the youth, to come back to us and be friends with us, be family with us, like have that friendship, have that bond with parents, and not be scared to open up what it is that they need to open up, because they're not sure if they're going to be understood or misunderstood. They just don't know. So it's easier for our own kids to go communicate with a complete stranger because they know they're going to get some level of support. And it saddens me to think that, because I hear it a lot from the young generation. They can't have certain communication with parents because they know what comes from that. It's not understanding. It's not, let's talk about this. It's not necessarily, what can I do to help? It's like, how did you do that? Why did you get there? How is this happening? And what are we going to fix it? And this is how we're going to fix it. I think those are the things that's getting us in trouble, but it makes me, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think we've lost the battle just yet. And hopefully, like I said, we'll get more of you guys. As I've talked to some kids, some young generation, some people that said, nope, we're going to go do our own thing. You all just stay there. I'm going to continue to push that agenda because we're not going to go away. We are who we are. We are the generation that brought you guys up here. We're not willing to let go of the beauty that we have. We're willing to let go of the stuff that doesn't work for anyone. We live in this country. I think we can learn from it, but completely, disregarding and completely aborting who we are, completely just walking away from being who we are. I don't think it's the right thing either. And I'm not necessarily saying the young generation is doing that, but I feel like the gap is widening, and they're bringing, like, creating their own identity in the way that makes sense to them. And I would like to, for the young generation and the second generation, to really appreciate the beauty that comes with being an Ethiopian too. And someday I like to take a whole bunch of young generation back to Ethiopia and show you all how it was done. If I still remember some of it. I do remember. I've been going back to Ethiopia for other reasons, and I do remember. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. The people are amazing. I think every young generation, every young person needs to go to Ethiopia, somewhere in Africa, and just be. Then you can tell me this is something we want to abandon. I doubt that it is, but I don't want to take over a conversation, so I'm going to stop.
Thank you. I know he has to hop out because he has a big day today.
Yeah.
So we would love you to be part of our conversation, and because we don't want that echo chambers to scare us, youngies away. In conclusion, can you? I mean, in your conclusion, can you? What are the thing that you would like to have? Let's say, as we speak, our conversation right now, as if we are addressing, the public in Ethiopia, giving all the madness that's going on in the country, where people are not even having patience. They just want to, change that they haven't thought about, they have a dream about, many of them, but they've been there comfortably under the repressive regime of the TPLF, PRDF. But now we are breathing fresh air, and this got nothing to do with anti-Tigray people, because Tigray and the TPLF, they are two separate things. You being from Tigray doesn't mean that you're a supporter of a TPLF, and being former TPLF doesn't mean that you support the radical TPLF. But having said that, what would you end with as advice and whatnot, before we let you go, please? To the Prime Minister and to your age mate, because the age that I'm talking about they're the one that the pillars of change. They're the one that will be used, against the system to overthrow it, because of the theories that coming from the mob, the mob protest, the mob use of mob as like a bomb, to get over, run over Arat Kilo. So what would you say in terms of patience with the system, with the democratic, that getting nurtured to get stronger, institution to get stronger, and a leadership that you want to see will come, as long as we are patient, we are protecting the country from being, pro-Egyptian, from overthrowing the country and bringing whoever they want, so the country, Ethiopia, would be just a banana republic. What could you say, please?
I would say, sorry. Ethiopia, excuse me, my
Sorry,
voice is going
sorry.
away.
Water.
It's
Let me get some
dry.
water.
It's dry.
I only got 2 hours of sleep last night because I was finishing my last final for the semester. So maybe that's why. But Ethiopia has a long way to go. It's not going to be fixed. It has gone through years and years of generational trauma and pain. And even like recent events that are happening now with within the war in Tigray and massacres of Amara people and just things that are happening in Western Ethiopia, Eastern Ethiopia, all regions of Ethiopia seem to be plagued with conflict right now. Um, and that in a sense in our like diaspora community, especially within youth, I've seen has really riled up people and I would say to an extent radicalized them even into further going into their divisions that were instated by the TPLF instead of like uniting a country. There are ways that you can unite a country that has been through hardship. If we look to Rwanda, a country that had a genocide 20 to 25 years ago, 2.5 decades, now is moving to be a strong economic country that has political stability. You don't see the same ethnic issues that happen, even though there were the issues between the Hutu and the Tutsi and the Twa. You don't see that happening anymore because the government took proactive steps to addressing it instead of how it's been in Ethiopia, where a marginalized group gains power, marginalizes everyone else, and then those marginalized groups will gain power. Marginalization does not solve marginalization. You have to address the root cause. So what I would say is, if at the end of the day, if we want to see change, we need to see specific policies that will address the root cause of pain in Ethiopian people, because the Ethiopian people are what make Miss Mami said, Ethiopian people are what make Ethiopia. If Ethiopian people don't feel like Ethiopia is being representative of them, then we see the disintegration of Ethiopia at that point. So through economic policies, we could do, or economic and like civil policies, we can mimic kind of like what we've seen in Rwanda through Gaka courts or International Criminal Tribunal in South Africa, where we have peace and reconciliation commissions. Things like that are what will help solve the it will help address the issues of Ethiopia and the pain that we've seen, and then from there we can work on solutions to addressing how do we solve this complex problem of being representative of all these people, being inclusive, being equitable for all these people. So I would end on that, and I would hope that the Prime Minister does more to be more representative, because there are a lot of people that are being hurt, and that won't help anyone in the end. So.
Thank you, and I hope you enjoy your day, and we look forward to speaking with you. And as you know, we are not the only. Our echo chamber is not the only obstacle that keeps youth away from involvement. The youth also think they have a better way, a sweeter way of this is boring. That's over there. That's one a better one. So you will be the voice that will realize, and educate this population that even though it's boring, there is something you can get out of it that will help shape you for better as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Okoni. Thank you, Miss Mommy. It was nice
Thank
talking
you.
to you guys.
Very nice talking to you too. Hopefully
Yes.
we'll talk again.
Hopefully. Thank you. Have a great rest of your guys' day.
You
You
too.
too.
You too. Bye
Have
bye.
fun. Mm?
Yes. Coming back to okay, he left. Okay. Okay. Coming back to you, Miss Mami. You mentioned about the Kurds.
Yes.
What someone who does not know, I haven't heard about GERD. What is it, and what do we need to know? To
So
support it. Mhm.
I was trying to explain what GERD is before my the internet connection went out on me. Hopefully, you won't listen to the word GERD and go out again.
Mhm.
GERD stands for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, and the project started, I believe, around 2011. Even though I know the work started a while back, but aggressively 2011, 2010 is when they started working on it diligently, and it really is generating electricity for Ethiopia. First and foremost, it has a potential to generate, and I don't necessarily have all the technical numbers in front of me, but it has the potential to provide electric power to the country, anyone and everyone in Ethiopia, and then be able to actually sell some of that electric power to the neighboring countries, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Sudan, whether it's even Egypt. Now, we all know that there is a huge thing between Egypt and Ethiopia in the negotiation and into coming to an agreement with what GERD means to us and what GERD means to them. And Sudan is in the middle of it. There are some technical stuff related to what GERD is, but in terms of what it means to Ethiopia, what it means to Africa. So being able to generate that much power, and from some of the experts that I've talked to, we did have a panel discussion. It really is. First of all, it will address our own issues back in Ethiopia. Egypt is up in arms with this whole GERD project because it's going to take away water from them, even though a whole lot of the water is being contributed by Ethiopia. Egypt utilizes the water 80 some percent, and it is understandably so. It's they use water, and if you think about it, and if we go down a little bit into the details, Egypt, right around that area in the GERD area, they
Mhm.
have this lush farming. I mean, talk about, I mean, just looking at the picture, it makes you want to wonder how we allowed this to happen for this long,
Mhm.
using the water.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, this water is going to be turned into, or this water is going to contribute to generating some power, electricity power. So that one lady, a whole lot of the ladies that in Ethiopia are still using wood to make injera, to make what, and
Mhm.
if you've been to Ethiopia, all of a sudden, boom, there's no power. There is not enough electricity that goes around for the country, yet somebody really is using it for something else. To me, that is just not balanced.
Mhm.
So it is a ticket out of the for Ethiopia, it's a ticket out of poverty, at least in the sense that yes, it will provide us with the electricity that the country needs and more, and we'll be able to sell that to it at a cheaper rate to Kenya, Sudan, and the surrounding countries who may be. So that it's going to generate an amazing income for the country, and that can turn right into developing the country even more, whether it's bringing technology to how people farm, whether it's bringing technology, whatever it is that the country needs to develop itself. The GERD project has the potential to
Mhm.
really put Ethiopia on the map, and not just Ethiopia, Africa. Okay, because I've read some articles that talked about even Kenya and Sudan and the surrounding countries are purchasing these powers, electricity at such a high rate. Ethiopia can actually provide it for a cheaper rate. Now, I'm not saying that is the plan and that's what they're going to do. This is a prediction that people are talking about. It will be more than enough for the country and what we need it for, and then it will generate income so that Ethiopia can, put that back into the country in the development, whatever the area may be. Um, it's not a simple project, or it hasn't been a simple endeavor for the GERD to get here. 100% right now. The project is supported by the Ethiopian government and the Ethiopian people locally and abroad. There is no other country up until the recent times that certain people, or certain, at least in the US, they were thinking about, not specific to GERD, but there are, the project itself, let's just say, is 100% primarily supported by the Ethiopian government, the people locally there, and the diaspora. There's been a lot of activities, a lot of support from the diaspora, trying to do fundraising towards that project. I know a lot of people that work tirelessly to educate people about what GERD is about, what its potential, what it will mean to Ethiopia, what it would mean for the continent of Africa, and the reason why we should support it. So it is the one thing that Ethiopia needs to push through and complete, because it will mean a whole lot more economically for the country. Economically, there are some, technical and political pieces, but I think it's important for the project to be completed.
Sorry, the power ran out of power. Keep saying, keep going.
Right. I think there's
Oh,
that's,
okay.
that's what it is. The GERD project is critical for Ethiopia for economic development and what it means for the country.
So why does Egypt then if Egypt has its own dam that creates jobs, electricity, used water for irrigation and whatnot, why Egypt is taking this GERD as something threats against Egypt or the Egyptian livelihood?
Well, like I said, they've benefited from the water, the downstream water, and the sort of the salt itself from the water, and then the soil itself. It's very fertile. The water goes through and it leaves that, we all know that the soil comes down, and that's very fertile. And Egypt has benefited from there. I mean, the farming that they use for irrigation, Egypt benefited. And I know the face value communication conversation about why Egypt has a concern is it's primarily their drinking water, and it is. But past beyond the drinking water, they're also using it to for irrigation. And Ethiopia and building the dam itself isn't necessarily preventing from water going where it needs to go. It's what they're fighting for is not necessarily, in my mind, the water, but what the water will no longer provide. So if when the dam is done and it is what it is, all that fertile soil could possibly stay back in Ethiopia. And some, I'm sure it will still go, but not a maybe. Don't, I'm not, you know, expert in this matter, but from what I read, their main concern is, in the downstream areas, there are some things that they benefit from GERD, including, like I said, the soil is the salt itself from when the water goes and it leaves that salt behind, and certain areas benefit from that. And then, at least in the Egypt area, their irrigation is unbelievable. All you have to do is just look it up, and you would be like, have you ever seen any kind of irrigation, any kind of farming situation in Ethiopia as lush as that? Their technology, using the irrigation, using the water that goes through Ethiopia, they have grown so much. When you turn right around, the farmers in Ethiopia are still plowing with ox. So still so traditional, so backwards. It's almost on the back of the person that is turning the soil with the, yeah. So
The issue is not the water. The issue is about is it It's been a long time since I took a chemistry. Is a sedimentation, it's not a sedimentation, but also part of the, I used to live on the river, and the farm that we had right by the, edge of the river, every year get changes. Every year we get new soil that's so rich with nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is that the soil that water brings to Egypt, that's what they're looking for.
They're
This
not talking
is
about
saying,
that, but
looking
that's
for
what it
the
is.
soil. We're not looking for the water, because there's a lot of water going to Egypt, right? So
But they're not saying that. They're
yeah,
not saying,
yeah,
we're not going to get as quality water as we
yeah.
are used to. And they're going back to the 1950s and the 1960s, this colonial treaties that they have, agreements that they have when, that agreement was signed. Ethiopia was nowhere part of that agreement. There was not a single human being that represented Ethiopia when that agreement was done. So they're saying, oh, we have a treaty or agreement 99 years ago, and they still want to implement that. And how fair is it? The water belongs to Ethiopia, the majority of it, but more than Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan are benefiting from it, primarily Egypt. So they're not necessarily talking about they are attaching it to drinking water, and they're saying, oh, Egypt isn't going to have water. How can you take water away from people? Well, even forget electricity, water.
Mhm, mhm.
The people of Ethiopia do not have enough water. Why would it be fair for Ethiopia to just let go of all of it when within the country there is a shortage of water? Think about it. How fair is that, and how reasonable is that? And why should somebody say, okay, before I can allow my own people drink water, I'm not just going to let your people drink water, and then do your irrigation, and maybe after that, yeah, we can consider having water for ourselves. To me, it's not fair.
Mhm.
Then the point is, they're not necessarily attaching it to that. They're attaching it to, oh, you're taking the source of water. This is our livelihood, and what are we gonna drink? That's not what I understand. I think the real issue is that their irrigation isn't gonna be as much. Maybe the water that goes out there may not necessarily carry that much fertile soil behind. And
Mhm.
then in that other side, there is also, I forgot what the technical term is, but the salt that lives behind. You could literally dig it out and turn it, you have salt. Um, well, that's wealth that Ethiopia deserves to have a fair share. And anybody would say, I think, if you can't take care of your own people, how can you take care of others? And the thing is, up until now, all these years, why didn't people care? I mean, Ethiopia kept or stayed in poverty. It struggled with shortage of water, shortage of electricity. Our moms still carry wood on their back to go cook meals for their families. The farmers, like I said, still turn the soil on their
Mhm.
backs. Okay,
Mhm.
technology couldn't do that because there's no irrigation system, because somebody else is taking advantage of it, and somebody decided not to do anything with it. All these years, people were okay with that continuing, but the time has come. People are saying no more, no more. We have a lot of people that are engaged in this conversation and this project to make it happen, and it should happen. All of us should support this because it will mean ticket out of poverty for your moms, my moms, the people that are left there, the people that are still carrying wood from whatever place to cook a meal for themselves and their families. Economically, it is viable. Economically, it is important. Economically, it's only fair. Economically, it is the one thing that can really lead the country out of poverty in so many ways if we really did it right.
Thank you. It's when we talk about these girds, it make me think whether chemistry or geography. It's been a long time since I read some paper on soil, and to understand. And these good arguments, I realized that when I was listening to, was the last month listening to the Sudanese foreign minister, or no, water and irrigation minister, something. It was asked by Al Jazeera, what is the issue about? And what, it was like, the issue is not about water. Then what then? So then I realized that it's just, the fertile soil that the water, the water carries every year, that Egypt's really desperately looking for. So beside GERD, what are the takeaway to conclude our discussion today, and for the audience to have in terms of your EPDN, in terms of women issues that you have founded an organization for, and in terms of the upcoming Ethiopian election, you haven't said anything. I'm not saying pick a party, but how the importance of it, why it should not be postponed. Anything that you want to conclude?
Well, in conclusion, I guess it takes, in the world, in the Western world, at least here in the States, somebody had taken a statement from Ethiopia or somewhere in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a village to raise a child, right? It takes a village, and that's how we know. I mean, that's not a brand new idea to us. That's how we know what life is. It takes a village. Right, even today, here in the States, it is going to take a village if we're going to see any change in Ethiopia. It is going to take all of us, as I said earlier, coming to that common ground, whether it's one, whether it's two, whether it's five. We have to come to a common ground. We have to find those few things that brings us together, appreciating our differences, and not turn into antagonistic kind of relationship. We could be unique in the ways that we want to be unique. And then if we're going to be successful, if we're going to be a force to be reckoned with, if we're going to create that synergy, we have to find those common grounds and stand strong on those common grounds. Okay. And it's beyond empowering women. It's beyond putting a woman as a token somewhere. And the young gentleman picked up on it. He talks about it. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is every one of us being in the space that we are in, and bringing that space together, and being okay with the space that we all occupy, and use it to first change our own world, our mindset, and then maybe the mindset of our next door, the community, the country, even the country that we live in. The image that people have for Ethiopia is just incredible. You can just walk outside and ask somebody, where do you think Ethiopia is, or what do you think about Ethiopia, or what they think about Ethiopians in general. It's just incredible. We have the obligation, we have the responsibility to put that image that we want to see Ethiopia seen as. I think it was Gandhi that said, be the change you want to see. We all need to be the change that we want to see, without changing myself, without changing my own mindset, without being open to some kind of change. There is no winning. There is no winning. Together we can win. Mm-hmm. Separately, and that is an absolute open door to adversity, to something completely that none of us want to see. In division, in polarization, no one has won this far. The Western world didn't do it that way. It's still not happening that way. Polarization did not work for anyone in the history of the world, and we do not need to have to practice it. We have to learn from history. History does not need to repeat itself because we decided not to learn from it. So in the Ethiopian public diplomacy network, really our short and long-term plan and vision, hopefully, is to have dialogues like this, to bring the best image, the positive image, and create that positive relationship and diplomacy with anyone and everyone who is willing to work together. Ethiopia has a lot of potential. Africa, the continent of Africa, has a lot of potential. And if we don't know, or if we're not smart enough to really take care of it, it wouldn't be ours. Somebody else will benefit from it, not us, not our generation. But why? Why? I mean, there's a reason why we all kind of left the country and here, and somehow we all had an opportunity to go to school and get educated, maybe even have a change of heart, a change of mindset, and all that good stuff. So we need to turn right around and apply it back to where we came from, because the generation, we owe it to the generation. I think we owe that. We owe it to our own conscience first. So when I say, what did I do to contribute to this world, then I can at least say, if anything else, I try to be positive. I try to, do the right thing, and then allow others to also follow the same thing. Um, that's what we're trying to do. It's not about supporting a person or being a mouthpiece to something. It's standing for what you believe in. If whatever it is that supports this development effort, this reform effort to the country of Ethiopia, we're here to support. Are we not going to say anything if we see something otherwise? I'm fully confident that we can, and we have been. But like I said, antagonistic approach is not the solution either, except it will drive some kind of wedge between people. It will be more of a detriment than a benefit. I think when we start seeing each other as the person first and not as this other thing, is going to bring us to unity better. If we really consider the country first before I consider me first, that's the kind of message that we want to put out. And if we can change the perception that certain, countries have, like right here, we live in this country, we've been talking to public officials, they have certain perceptions. And, when a statement comes out of the State Department, Ethiopia must, Ethiopia is a sovereign country. Nobody gets to tell the United States the US must and US abides. Ethiopia is a sovereign country, and it needs to be considered as such. And if that's the message that we need to put out, then we need to put out. And really, what I would like to conclude with, this isn't just a battle for Ethiopians, it's a battle for Africans altogether, because I don't know where I said it. I've been talking quite a lot, but today it's Ethiopia, tomorrow it's another country in Africa. So the African continent needs to also come together. This kind of dialogue needs to happen with more than just Ethiopians. It needs to happen with other African countries. And then I also would like to even go further and say, I would love to have conversations and dialogues with, our friends that we live together here. We're Ethiopian Americans. We talk a lot about Ethiopia, but we are Ethiopian Americans. We're African Americans, right? And I would love to have other, like our American friends, to also take part in this dialogue. Like I said, maybe us learning from them and them learning from us. It's true, not everybody knows about Ethiopia, the continent of Africa. They know what they know, but it is up to us to also educate others about what we know, the richness of the country, the richness of the culture, the stuff that makes us who we are. And then maybe we can also learn from our American friends about their system, the foreign policy. What does that even mean? Our role as citizens in this country, what can we do to actually shape our own world here and the world that we consider to be, for us to still be part of, which is, Ethiopia. Lately, our eyes have been opened up for a lot of things. Yes, in the recent years, we've engaged a lot in the political forum, because we do need to be at that table. Whatever table we need to be to have a voice, we need to be there. We can't just allow, or we can't just wait for somebody to speak for us. It's got to be us, one of us, somebody. When it comes to Ethiopia, when it comes to Africa, whatever forum, whatever space we can occupy and have the opportunity to occupy, we need to be that diplomatic voice. We need to be that positive voice. We need to create that image kind of correct that wrong image that people have about Africa and Ethiopia. And I would love to engage. Like I said, our American allies, there are a lot of people that are supportive of Ethiopia, supportive of the Ethiopian people. We came here, we lived here, we assimilated, we have kids, their kids and our kids go to school together, they're friends, we've connected. So we need to just continue having this kind of dialogue. I think talking about it does something. I'm not necessarily saying, hear me, I'm right. I'm just saying this is what I stand on today. And if I need to be corrected, I will be corrected. But somebody needs to have this kind of conversation. Fighting, completely shutting off and not being willing to listen to one another is not the way. And the young gentleman, prior to him leaving, told us it starts from home. We shut them out, they shut us out. We shut the world out, the world will shut us out. And we just need to break through this wall and step right in and say, hear us, we are here. We're here to stay. We have a voice. We care about the continent of Africa. We care about Ethiopia, and our voice needs to be heard, and heard in a way that is organized, structured, um, what is the term? The word is escaping me right now. Constructive, not just this, whatever. It has to be constructive. Like I said, we need to find what is that common ground that brings us all together. I'll tell you one today. The thing that brings us together, the one thing. If
Yes.
we can forget everything, there isn't a single thing, Mame, that would bring us together. No way. No how. There is one thing that brings us together. We all are humans. That seriously, that humanity brings us together. If I see you, you see me as the person, as a human first, that is one huge common ground. Okay. It don't matter what language you speak, it don't matter which corner of Ethiopia or which corner of Africa you come from, as long as we could say as humans, for whatever reason, created in the world of Africa, in the world of Ethiopia, and I could see you as a person, I think that's one common ground we can all agree with. I hope.
And
Because
that common ground to talk, if we use that to talk
yes,
between or among ourselves,
yes, yes.
then the change may be.
That's when we can then have that openness, open mind, open heart to have a dialogue. Not necessarily to say, I'm right, you're wrong. To listen to one another. Sometimes it's okay to agree to disagree. I may not take anything and everything that somebody says or somebody does and put out, but I can decide for myself what is right, what is wrong, but with a mindset and willingness to learn and to change. If I go in with an ammunition and say, you ain't gonna change me, I have a strong stand, this is what I believe in, it's a waste of time. Really, it's a waste of time. But if I go in with an open heart and an open mind and willingness to change, then there is a chance. Otherwise, we can all dig our heels down, way down. Nothing is going to lift. Nothing is going to give in. Nothing is going to give space. Own the space. Whatever space you occupy today, if I can just say one last thing, own your space. The space you occupy today, whether it's a space of being a mother, a space of being a sister, a brother, an aunt, whatever it is, a leader, um, at your workplace, whatever space we all have. You don't necessarily have to be a leader of an organization. Whatever space we occupy, we can use that space, recognize it, embrace it, be okay with it, change your own world, and then use that space to change the world we share. If we cannot change, if I'm not willing to change my own world, there is no way I should try and change somebody else's world. And we are not necessarily held responsible or expected to change the world, but we can change the world of one person. That is easy. One person at a time, one thing at a time, from whatever space we hold today. I think that is absolutely, if we could just recognize, like you held this space today to put our voices in this manner, right?
Mm.
You owned it, you embraced it. You're allowing, at least for what it's worth, our voices to go out to the women, to the young generation, to anyone and everyone who's willing to listen. People are entitled to their opinion. As we're speaking, people can form their opinions, and they're 100%, 100%. It's their right. They can form any kind of opinion. We're entitled to our opinions. But if we allow ourselves to let some of that sink in, to let some of that change us, just a little bit, just a tad bit. We don't even have to admit it to anyone. You don't even have to say, you know what, that was right. You don't even have to do that. But if we could just allow it to turn our head and see something that is different from what we are set on, that's a beginning of a mindset change in my mind. The big push, the main thing that we need to change, the reform is in the head. The mindset needs to change for this generation, the coming generation, and I'll be the first to say it, even for my generation, for the so-called first generation. I don't know which generation I'm in, but I'm in two world. Whatever it is, whoever we are, what
Yeah.
space we occupy,
Yeah.
today the work needs to start in the mindset. Being willing to see the light, the positive, in the perfect storm, in that chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Can we see past the chaos?
Isn't that the mind uh, uh, the mind chain? Isn't that the issues that um, I'm sorry, but I have to say this because the Prime Minister Abiy is struggling with, because of people have locked somewhere else, but the Prime Minister trying to do something that will make the country a better, uh, prosperous Ethiopia, pay better wages so that brain drain cannot continue. Like
Mm-hmm.
country like Kenya, for example, now
Mm-hmm.
they are getting better jobs. Even some of my wife's friend here, eh,
Yeah, they're going back.
having better job. Even some of she was a cousin who was here, having her husband having much better job, an engineer, doing a better, well-paying job than not taking a job in the U.S.
Yeah.
Isn't do the mindset these folks that fighting for spaces because of this election now, they want to get that space or that platform just because of, not because to change what has not been working, but simply because to comfort themselves and continue to just getting the salary that they, and then basil money, public fund and whatnot, while what the prime minister is struggling to, for the people to understand, they see that as anti this, anti that, whatnot. So how do you make that brain, mindset, to change? I know you have mentioned a lot, ingredients of, to change that mindset, but maybe if you could address, for example, lay women that do not go to school or went to school, but their English is not there, still as lousy as mine. But can you say it in other, so you miss your kwankwa agarbit? We may not about, but Maranya yun, bumina yun. Could you say that? Address something, them to issues that why reform is important, why, this young generation, ages between 14 through 34 cannot be utilized as community or tribal weapons, to cause problems or to stop democratic changes simply because of the ethnicities issues that get in the way, instead of working for the common good. What would you say, an example, in language, in Amharic language, for example?
So let me say a couple of things to address a couple of things you mentioned in English, and then I'll try to switch gears, and I will
Thank
do
you.
the
Thank you.
Amharic.
Thank you.
How can we, so you mentioned that the current administration is, and it's not just the current administration, is not Abiy It's not just Abiy. The current administration entails a whole lot of people.
Exactly.
It is an administration. It ain't gonna be one individual.
Mhm.
But he is the leader of that current administration. So I get it. It's easier to, when we say Abiy, we were thinking about the administration. So in that administration, what is the struggle? The mindset needs to change. Okay, and maybe, and I don't know a whole lot of them. Um, just from experience and from what we were saying, coming from where we are coming, maybe we tend to be set in our ways, right? So the first thing is, and if I was to be asked, think that, and I worked for government for over 20 some years, let me tell you this, public administration is, I'm in it, okay? Um, Public administration or public servant. So we are here to serve the public. Okay?
Mhm.
In anything we do and in anything we say, we are a reflection of the government, good, bad, or indifferent. Okay, so maybe what we need to, what I think would be helpful really is to maybe even understand what it means to be public servant. You are not there to serve your interest. You are not there to serve your agenda. You are not there to benefit first and foremost, and then maybe think about others. That's not what public service is. That needs to be redefined in the world of Africa in most of cases, and I think in Ethiopia too, because we all know what it means to be in an office, right?
Mhm.
We all know that. I don't even need to discuss that. And that's the kind of mindset change I'm talking about. So having that space, being in that space as a public servant, comes with obligations, comes with responsibilities, and that integrity, representing a country.
Mhm.
Okay, far, far, far better than what that position brings to me. What do I bring to that position? What does it mean? What am I doing from that space? Using that space, what am I doing with it? Right. So when we talk about mindset, the paradigm shift, the mindset change, it has a lot of components in it. I just wanted to bring the major things, since we're talking about, Abiy's leadership, or the current administration and whatnot. I think the thing to look at is to understand, what does it mean to be a public servant? The public, you are um, accountable to the public, not the other way around. In
Yes.
the world we live in, here
Mhm.
in the States, I am accountable to the public because I am a public servant. I can go to King Supers and not act like whichever way I want, because somebody would say, doesn't she work for the city? I have that obligation.
Yeah.
I mean that wholeheartedly, because I am an image for the name I carry. Okay. Maybe first or maybe second, they would say, after they say mommy, they would say she works for the city, or she works for such and such. I represent whatever organization I represent because
Right.
I'm a public servant. I'm held to that standard, that ethics. A
Yes.
public servant should have a standard. We have ethics committee. Trust me. I don't know if there is such a thing happens or even exists in Ethiopia or Africa. Who are they accountable to? It's reversed in Ethiopia or in Africa. They are accountable to the public, and I don't mean to say the public can just run them over and say and do whatever. There's standard of that. There is ethic that comes with it. There's expectation that comes with it, and I'm not saying I know everything and nobody knows this. I'm just expressing what I think
Hmm.
should help change this mindset. Let's go to the Marina piece. Whew, it's kind of hard to
So,
change gears just like that, but I'm gonna do the best that I can. So the
thank
thing
you.
that we're talking about is, so if we're talking about changing the mindset and how the younger generation has the obligation and the power really to make it happen. So here we go. Here goes nothing. Kind of hard is just switch to አማርኛ እንግዲህ እየተነጋገርን ያለ ነው ሆነስትሊ የአስተያየት ለውጥ አመለካከት ለውጥ ማምጣት ነው። የመጀመሪያው ለውጥ አመለካከታችንን አስተያየታችንን መለወጥ መቻል ነው። ለለውጥ ፈቃደኛ መሆን ማለት ጥሩን ለውጥ ይዞ ጥሩ ያልሆነውን መተው። ግን ሳንስማማ ስንቀር በሚሆነው በሀሳብ ወይም በአይዲዮሎጂ በአንዳንድ ነገር ሳንስማማ ስንቀር ጠላትነት መፍጠር አያስፈልገንም ማለት ነው። ላይክ ካልተቀበልኩት አልተቀበልኩም፣ ግን እንዴት ነው ችግር ለመፍጠር ወይንም ለዛ ሰው ወይም ለዛ አይዲዮሎጂ ለዛ ሀሳብ እኔ ስላልተስማማውበት የሀሳብ መውደቅ አለበት ብዬ መነሳት የለብኝም፣ ወይንም ለዛ ሀሳብ መውደቅ ምክንያት መሆን የለብኝም። የነደደውን ለማጥፋት መነሳት የለብኝም፣ ወይም ደግሞ ደህና የሆነው ነገር ላይ ተነስቼ እሳት ለማንደድ መነሳት አያስፈልገኝም ማለት ነው። እና እየተነጋገርን ያለ ነው ከእድሜያቸው ከ14 እስከ 34 ድረስ በተለይ በሀገራችን ላሉ ሰዎች ሳናቀው ሳንጠይቀው ሳንመራመረው የምናደርጋቸው ነገሮች አንዳንድ ጊዜ ችግር ላይ ይጥሉናል። እያሰቡ አይደለም፣ እየተመራመሩ አይደለም፣ አልገባቸውም አይደለም እያልኩኝ ግን አይደለም እያልኩ ያልኩት ምንድን ነው ሰዎች ለአንድ ነገር ሲጋብዙን ወይንም አንድ ነገር በውስጣችን ሲፈጠር ያ ኢሞሽን ከውስጥ ሲመጣ አንድ አመለካከት አንድ ሀሳብ ግንፍል ብሎ ከማለቱ በፊት ሲጀመር በነገሮች ዙሪያ ተቀምጦ መነጋገር መቻል በጣም ትልቅ ነገር ነው። ይሄ ፎረን ኮንሰፕት ይመስላል። አሜሪካን ሀገር ተቀምጠን ሌላ ነገር ልናወራላችሁ ፈልገንም አይደለም፣ ግን ሲሰራ ስላየነው ነው። በዚህ ሀገር ስንኖር በዛ አይነት ነገር ውስጥ ስለምናልፍና ወደ ስምምነት ኮመን ግራውንድ ወደ ሆኑት ወይም ደግሞ መካከለኛ ወደ ሆኑት የምንስማማባቸው ነገሮች ላይ የሚያመጡ ነገሮች እንደሆኑ ስላየናቸው ነው። ስለዚህ አንድን ነገር ወተን ከማድረጋችን በፊት የማንን አጀንዳ ነው እያስተናገድን ያለ ነው? ምን እየሰራን ነው? እኔ ራሴ በግሌ መጀመሪያ በፎር የአንድን ሰው ሀሳብ ተቀብዬ ከመሮጤ በፊት ለእኔ ለራሴ ምን እያለኝ ነው አይደለም ለእኔ ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ አጠገቤ ላሉት ሰዎች ከቤቴ ለሚያድጉ ልጆች ምን አይነት መልእክት እየሰጠሁኝ ነው? ምን አይነት ተፈጥሮ እየፈጠርኩኝ ነው? ለጎረቤቶቼስ ምን አይነት ነው? እኛ ድሮ ስንኖር እንግዲህ ኢትዮጵያ ተብሎ ስንኖር በኖርንበት ዘመን አንድ ልጅ በጎረቤት ሁሉ ተጠብቆ ነው ያደገው። በእናትና በአባቱ ብቻ አይደለም። ጎረቤቶቻችንም ፈርተን ያደግ ነው። ቢካዝ እንደሱ ነው አይደለም፣ ትልልቅ ሰዎችን አክብረን ስለኖርን ማለት ነው። እና አሁንም ቢሆን ከኔ በኋላ ሰውን እንደ ሰውነቱ አይቶ ጎረቤትን አይቶ አገርንና ከተማን ማየት መቻል ያስፈልጋል። ለአንድ ነገር ስንነሳ የተነሳንበት ምክንያቱ ምንድን ነው? አንድ ነገር ላይ አክሽን ስንወስድ የምንወስድበት ምክንያቱ ምንድን ነው? ሰው ስላደረገው ነው የማደርገው? ስላመንኩበት ነው? በአንዳንድ ነገሮች ዙሪያ ደግሞ ተነጋግሮ ለመመለስ ፈቃደኛ ነኝ? ሀሳቤን ለማስተካከል መንገዴን ለመለወጥ ፈቃደኛ ነኝ? ወይንስ ከዚህ በፊት የሄዱበት አካሄድ ሰዎችን እዚህ ጋር ደርሷቸዋል እና ምንም እንኳን ከኔ የሚጎድል ላይ ትክክል እንዳልሆነ በአቅም እስከጠቀመኝ ድረስ የራሱ ጉዳይ፣ እኔም ለሰው ተጠቅሜበት አልፋለሁ። ያ ማለት እንግዲህ ከጊዜ በኋላ ሁሉም የሚመጣው ነገር እንደዛ ይሆናል ማለት ነው። አንድ ቦታ ላይ ግን የሆነ ቦታ ላይ ማቆም አለብን። ትክክል አይደለም በቃ መባል አለበት። ሜቢ የማይመስል ንግግር ይሆናል፣ ግን እውነት ለመናገር አንድ ቦታ ላይ ይሄ ሳይክል መቆም አለበት። አገርን ዘርፎ ሀብት የማን ሀብት ነው? እንዴት ነው ሀብታምነት የሚሆነው? ማለት ከሰው ወስዶ እኔ እንግዲህ ኢትዮጵያ ላይ ስራ ስለምሰራ ይሄን ነገር ቀረብ ብዬ አውቀዋለሁ። ከደሃ ላይ ወስዶ መብላት ከዛ የወረደ ነገር የለም። ለደሃ ከተባለ ነገር ላይ አስቀርቶ ሀብት ለራስ ማግኘት መፈለግ ከዛ የወረደ ነገር የለም። በሰው ላይ ጭካኔ ለማድረግ ማሰብ፣ ፕላን ማድረግ፣ መወጠን ከዛ በሰው ላይ የሚደርስ የወረደ ነገር የለም። ምንም ጨርሶ ባናቅ፣ ምንም አይነት እውቀት ባይኖረን፣ ለጭንቅላታችን ያበላ ነው ያጠጣ ነው ምንም አይነት ኢንፎርሜሽን ምንም አይነት እውቀት ባይኖረን ሰው በሰውነቱ ክቡር ነው የሚለው ነገር ሰው ስለሆንን ይነግረናል። እኔ ላይ ሊደርስ የማልፈልገውን ነገር ሰው ላይ ለማድረስ ስነሳ እኔ ከፊት ለፊቴ ያለው ሰው ላይ ላደርሰው የምፈልገውን ነገር ሳስብ ልክ እንደዛው ከኔ በኋላ እኔ ላይ ደግሞ እንደዛ ሊያደርስ የሚፈልግ ሰው ሊኖር ይችላል ብዬ ማሰብ መቻል አለብኝ። እንደ ሰው ተፈጥሮ መቀጠል ካለብን እንደ ሰው መቀጠል አለብን። እንደ ሰው የኛ ያልሆነ ነገር አያደምቅም። ምንድን ነው የሚባለው? የሰው ወርቅ አያደምቅ ይባላል አይደል? ይህ የተውሶ የመጣ ነገር ከውጭ የሰበሰብናቸው ነገር ሳንመረምር በቃ ሌላው ሲያደርገው ዝም ብለን ሰብስበን የያዝነው ነገር እያጠፋን ነው እንጂ እያለማን አይደለም ያለው። አይደለም ቴክኖሎጂ በሉት በዩቲዩብ የምንሰማው በፌስቡክ የምንሰማው ዝም ብለን የምንሰበስባቸው ነገሮች እያለሙን አይደሉም፣ እያጠፉን ነው ያሉት። እኛን ብቻ አይደለም የምናሳድጋቸው ልጆች እያጠፋ ነው ያለው። ከዕለታት አንድ ቀን ልናጣቸውም እንችላለን። እነዚህ እነማን ናቸው የምንላቸውን አይነት ትውልድ ልናተርፍ እንችላለን። እና እናትም እንሁን እህትም እንሁን አክስትም እንሁን አያትም እንሁን በተቀመጥንበት ባለንበት ቦታ እዛ ቦታ ላይ ሆነን መስጠት ያለብንን ነገር ከራሳችን ጀምሮ በመስጠት መለወጥ እንችላለን። አንድ ሰው ከለወጥን ሁላችንም ደግሞ ራሳችንን ከለወጥን አገር መለወጥ እንችላለን። አንድ ሰው ሳንለውጥ እኛ ራሳችንን ሳንለውጥ አገር ለመለወጥ መነሳት የምንችል አይመስለኝም። ሁለተኛ ቅድም የተናገርኩት መጨረሻ ላይ በአማርኛ ልድገመውና ጨርሳለሁ። ፓብሊክ ሰርቨንት ወይም ደግሞ እኔ በአማርኛ ምን እንደሚባል አላውቅም። እንግዲህ ይሄ የመንግስትን ወክሎ የሚሰሩ ሰዎች ፓብሊክ ሰርቨንት ወጥ አማርኛ ወርድ አይ ዶንት ኖ። ፓብሊክ ሰርቪስ ማለት ይሄ ነው በቃ ህዝቡን ለህዝብ አገልግሎት የተሰማሩ ሰዎች ማለት ነው። መንግስት መስሪያ ቤት ውስጥ አስቀምጧቸው፣ ከፍተኛ ነገር ላይ ያስቀምጧቸው፣ ወታደር ይሁን ጦረኛ ይሁን መሳሪያ ይዞ የመንግስት መስሪያ ቤት የሚጠብቀው ይሁን የመንግስት ወይም ደግሞ የህዝብ አገልጋይ የህዝብ አገልግሎት የተሰማራ ሰው ኃላፊነቱ ለህዝብ ነው፣ ለራሱ አይደለም። እንደዛ አይነት ስልጣንም ላይ ይሁን ቦታ ላይ ያንን አይነት ስፔስ ላይ የተቀመጥ ነው እንደዛ አይነት ቦታ ላይ የተቀመጥ ነው የህዝብ በርደን ሊሰማን ይገባል። የህዝብ ነገር ያ ኃላፊነት ሊሰማን መጀመሪያ ይገባል። ያንን ኃላፊነት ነው መጀመሪያ መወጣት ያለብን። what's in it for me ከማለታችን በፊት እኔ ምንድነው የምጠቀምበት ከማለታችን በፊት ለኔ ጥቅም ብለን ከሆነ እዛ ቦታ ላይ የገባ ነው ሆነስትሊ እየጎዳን ነው እንጂ እየጠቀምን አይደለንም ያለ ነው አይደለም። እኔ እዚህ ሀገር ስኖር ያ እንደ ሰውም ኢኮኖሚ መሆን ይቻላል፣ ግን as a civil servant የሚሰጥ ለስራችን የሚከፈልን ተቀብለን እንኖራለን ያለ ነው። ሌላ ነገር መሆን ካማረኝ ሌላ ነገር ውስጥ ገብቼ ሌላ ነገር መስራት ነው ያለብኝ። ለኔ የሚሰጠኝ ኮንቴንትመንት ለኔ የሚሰጠኝ ደስታ ይሄ አገር ጠቀማለሁ፣ ከተማ ጠቀማለሁኝ፣ የተቸገሩ የሀገሬን ሰዎች ነው ሞስትሊ ደግሞ ስናገኛቸው የምንጠቅማቸውም እኛም ራሳችን ስላለ የሀገራችንን ህዝብ እንጠቅማለን ብለን እዚህ አይነት ነገር ውስጥ ተቀምጠናል። ጥቅም ፍለጋ ከሆነ ጥቅም የምናገኝበት ቦታ ትክክለኛ ቦታ ላይ መሆን አለብን። ጥቅማችን የህዝብ ጥቅም ነው ብለን ካልን ግን የህዝብ ጥቅም ጥቅማችን መሆን አለበት። ህዝብ ሳንጠቅም እኛ ተጠቅመን መገኘት እንዴት እንችላለን? ይሄ ነውር ነው የሚባል ቋንቋ አለ አይደል? ይሄ ነውር ነው። እና በቃ እንዴት ነው ሌላ ነገር ለማለት ብዬ አይደለም። በፍጹም ቅንነት ግን ልለው የምፈልገው መጀመሪያው አመለካከት መቀየር አለበት። አመለካከት መቀየር አለበት። በሐሳብ ስለተለያየን በሐሳብ ስለተራራቅን ጠላትነት ማፍራት ሶሉሽን አይደለም፣ መልስ አይደለም። በሐሳብ ተለያይቶ እዚች ጋር እንኳን ተለያይተናል፣ የኔ አካሄድ በዚህ ጋር ነው፣ እኔ የገባኝ እንደዚህ ነው ብለን ወይ እስኪገባን ድረስ መጠባበቅ መቻል አለብን። አለበለዚያ ግን ቅድም እንዳልነው ደግሞ የሚያገናኙንን ኮመን የሆኑትን አንድ የሚያደርጉንን መንገዶች ፈልገን እነዛ መንገዶች ላይ መስራት መቻል አለብን። የተሰራውን ከማፍረስ ይልቅ በአንድ ሐሳብ ብንለያይ በሁለት ሐሳብ ብንለያይ ጠላትነት ከመጀመራችን በፊት ኦኬ በዛ ሐሳብ ተስማምተን መገናኘት እስክንችል ድረስ እኔም በመንገዴ በመሰለኝ መንገድ ሊሄድ ይችላል፣ የሚቀጥለው ሰው በመንገዱ ሊሄድ ይችላል። ግን እንደ አገር ሁላችንን ደግሞ አንድ የሚያደርግ ነገር መገኘት አለበት። ቅድም በእንግሊዘኛ ስናወራ የተናገርኩት የፈለገሽን በይና አንድ የሚያደርገን ነገር ምንም የለም ብትሉኝ ሰዎች ነን መጀመሪያ፣ የሰው ፍጥረት ነን መጀመሪያ፣ ፍጡር ነን መጀመሪያ፣ ሰው ነን መጀመሪያ። እሱ ኮመን ግራውንድ ያደርጋል። ሰውን እንደ ሰው ማየት ስንተው ነው ችግር የተፈጠረው። ሰውን እንደ ሰውነቱ ስናየው ሰው በሰውነቱ ሊከበር ይገባዋል። ሰው በሰውነቱ ሊታመን ይገባዋል። ሰውነታችንን ይሄ ከእግዚአብሔር የተሰጠንን ሰውነት ማንነት ስንፈጠር የተሰጠንን ኢንተግሪቲ ስንጥል ማንነታችንን ስንጥል ነው ለሌላ ነገር የተጋበዝ ነውና ሌላ ነገር ውስጥ ገብተን ሰውን እንደ ሰው ማየት ያቆም ነው። ስለዚህ በመጀመሪያ እግዚአብሔር ፍጡር ነው ብሎ ሰውን ማየት ሌላ ነገር ቢቀርብን forget it ሌላ ነገር ፍጹም ልታመጪ አትችይም ብትሉኝ የእግዚአብሔር ፍጡር ነው ብሎ ሰውን ማየት መጀመሪያ ትልቁ ልንጥለው የተዘጋጀነው ነገር ነው። ደግሞም ትልቅ ጥፋት ሊያመጣብን ያለ ነገር ነውና ቅንነት የሚባለው ነገር መልካምነት የሚባለው ነገር በሐሳብ ብንለያይም እስክንገናኝ በሐሳብ እስክንገናኝ ድረስ it's okay ብለን በዛች ልዩነታችን ልዩነት ውበት ነው ይባላል አይደል? ልዩነታችንን አክብረን ደግሞ መኖር ብንችል ጥሩ ነው ብዬ እላለሁኝ። ብዙ ተናገርኩ፣ ይበቃኛል።
Thank you, Miss Mame. You are indispensable in these public discourses that now we are trying to approach for the betterment of Ethiopia and to create more understanding among our people. Because right now there are a lot of issues going around and argument even within one family member. Um, my brother, I have two brothers, but one was always we are together. The other one we always we argues, and the other younger cousin always argue. So there are a lot of issues every family disagree on or can agree on. We need to find ways where we can agree on, because if we can disagree, my brother and I would usually disagree. We wouldn't be, agree on anything. This conversation sounds simple from just being not here on CNN and being, just nowhere, right? But the power of the human being, regardless of what, whether two of us or one of us, three of us, five of us, we can make something big difference that can save thousands of lives. In my mind, which is with the stuff that you do, the conversation which we're trying to create, not because we like to talk, we are talkatives, but because to create the mind, to open a mind for to a more discussion. When we are engaged in public discourses, in public discussions, in forums and things like this, arguments, then we'll find a better way that will work better for us all. When Ethiopia, when the Mengistu Haile was toppled, I'll make it very short. I had injury and I was in hospital. So the coalition forces, mainly at the time, when the one that visiting the hospital, the clinic, they were the TPLF. Not because I'm singling them out, but because what I witnessed. So when they come to the hospital, they were carrying their rifle behind them, and they come and look at you. They see that you're not one of theirs. They just go so fast. They go so fast to look for the one that look like theirs, and they will talk to that person. That's not the issue. That shouldn't be the way of doing things. And not only one that speak your language, the one that look like you, as you mentioned in English and Amharic, but just being humanity. Being a humanity, that's a huge difference. Think about how many Ethiopian kids are being adopted in the West by the European Americans. And they took these kids as their children. Skin-wise, they're not the same. Food, whatnot, airbrush, they're not the same. But they treat them as their kids because of their human being.
Yep.
We need to stay engaged until people start talking and realize that the openness is the better way than the closeness, which can cause explosive.
Absolutely.
Any last closing? So I can relieve you.
We will close with this. We said a lot. What I want to say is, before we dismiss any of it or all of it, take a minute, think about it. First, just for ourselves. I'm not necessarily saying all these things because, like I said, I think I know better, I know more. I'm just saying this is what I understand and this is what I'm trying to do for me. And I'm just putting out this message so others can consider it. You don't have to take it, but consider it. Because now I'm trying to go in and out of Amharic and Ingilizenya, so my brain is being tricked. What I'm trying to say really is, we're human first, right? Created beings. Somebody didn't do this and put us on earth. It didn't, right?
Yeah.
Seriously. You are somebody's son. You are somebody's brother. You are somebody's father. You are somebody's uncle, whatever it is, right? I am the same. So when I look at you, I see you as a person, everything aside. If that is magnified for me, that comes first. A person created by the image of God, I have no business destroying you one way or another. Whether it's an emotion, whether it's in thoughts, whether it's in speaking words, whether it's in physical violence, I have no desire or I have no whereabout I have no right to be a stumbling block for you, to see your demise, to be a reason to antagonize you so you can't go further. Ethiopia is where we're in. When I say Ethiopia, because Ethiopia is the people, right? We're in the situation we're in. It's because we're very good at stepping in front of somebody and just being a deterrent. We're very good at antagonizing one another. A very good friend who happens to be not Ethiopian at all, not even from Africa, told me that we were very good at antagonizing one another. We see a lot of other communities promoting their community, promoting one another, lifting each other up. We're very good at burying each other down. If there is no way for me to get ahead, nobody else is going to get there. That's the model that we've seen for the longest time. And that's what I'm talking about, the mindset change, the paradigm shift. I can do what I can, but if I find somebody who could do a lot more, I should be the one to make a way for that person, because that person will turn right around and pull somebody else. We all need to do that. We just need to continue to pulling each other to the front, not turn back, not put down, whether it's in thinking, whether it's in words, whether it's in action or inaction. I think that's the beginning of a good dialogue. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Well, Miss Mami, Miss Mami, I I do really appreciate the time, the conversation, the thoughts you had put into this discussion.
thank you.
I do really look forward to speaking with you again and continuing having conversation. We're not going to change the world. We're not going to change Ethiopia. We're not going to remove AK-47, disarm, but we will try slowly. We can disarm
We
the
can change the world
AK-47.
of one.
At least even if we can disarm one, a wrong
We
one.
can change the mindset of one.
Yes,
We've accomplished quite a bit.
that's make a lot of sense. Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
You
Talk
too.
to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank,
And thank you for everything you do. You have such an amazing heart and passion for the country and for Ethiopia. I cannot thank you enough for creating a forum like this and having us to share at least what we have. So it just doesn't, it stays someplace. I mean, now at least it's out there in the air. Whoever is willing and able to listen to it and take anything from it, then at least we know that we were able to provide or at least share what we think is valuable. So thank you for everything you do. Appreciate it.
I would like to say too, you're very welcome. I have learned a lot. I haven't done anything, but I've learned a lot from you, and I decided that since the last 3 years of this transition government, I've decided that as one life to live. Previous regime, I refuse to be part of it because of ethic. When you mentioned earlier, I have ethical principle that do not really allow me to participate in something that humanistic. I want something humanistic. Uh, so because of that, I realized it's one life to live. It's time to contribute my time to see the change that I want to see up in Ethiopia, even though nobody listened to me by speaking out alone, the hair of coming out of my mouth, it has a power that's worse, more stronger than the nuclear weapon. If I can even change one child, that make me happy. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just gonna say though, I grew up in radio. Okay, I was very young when I got involved in in doing radio kind of work. When you put, just because you said my voice, like the air that you put out, the voice that you put out, it's a very powerful thing. You don't know where it's going to land. You don't know who's going to listen to it and when and for what reason. So the fact that we're putting this out, it's not all for, it's not going to be just wasted. A whole lot of people might have opinions and they're entitled to it.
Mhm.
If we can find, if there is a single human being that listens to this and say, you know what, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I would hate to even accept it. I would hate even to think about it, but that kind of makes sense. That means you're planting a seed. And in my mind, it's better to at least put it out, regardless of whether we think somebody's going to listen to it or not, because chances are somebody will, versus because we think nobody's going to listen to it and not speak at all. Because indifference is not any better or any different than the wrong thing. So don't assume that this is your time, your energy, your experience. Creating a forum like this, an opportunity for us to put out positive energy. I'm sure it helps. So thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this time.
Good grammar and spelling are important. But if you want to write essays that inspire,
Yeah, let's write an essay that inspires. Thank you.
Ethiopia shall continue. Ethiopia will get better. What will build, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Welcome, Kani like.
Thank you.
ለሰው ልጆች በዓለም ዙሪያ ሁሉ ሰላም ይሁን ምድሩ ሁሉ ሰላም 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 በዓለም ዙሪያ ሁሉ ለሰው
Well, audience, thank you so much for taking your time to attend this discussion. Should you have any question that we have forget to address, please drop them in their YouTube or Facebook, and we'll follow up with you. And also, please do subscribe to YouTube, and also you click the like button, so the next time we have a show, you will be able to see the notification. So again, thank you, and you have a wonderful day.